Thanks for joining us at Good Teams Win Great Teams Cover. We're here with our last division preview before we get to the season, the long slog, the 8th and final one. And we're going to take a look at the AFC West, last but certainly not least. And then we're on to the season. Very, very excited. Byron, Joe, joining me as always. How are you both doing? And just how excited are you for the start of the NFL season? That's very much just around the corner.
Yeah, buzzing, yeah. A week away, basically, now. And, yeah, it'd be good to get the AFC West done as well. Like you said, it's a big body of work every summer to get these previews done. But, I think we learn a lot from our guests, obviously, of, things we maybe didn't consider or players we haven't thought about so much. So, yeah, good to get it done. But, I will miss meeting all our guests every week to get it done, though.
Yeah, and speaking of guests, we've got two absolute crackers joining us. We've got returning guest Brendon Booth. He'll be helping us with the Las Vegas Raiders. And then we've got Tom Kraft from Midnight Sports and the Sleep at Work Network joining us to talk about the champs, the Kansas City Chiefs. Before we get to that, plenty have been going on. First up, I'm just back from Dublin. I was at the college football, Aer Lingus College Football Classic, to give it its full name, between Florida State and Georgia Tech at the Aviva Stadium, or Old Lansdowne Road, whatever you want to call it. What an incredible weekend. What an incredible game. Must learn not to bet the overs on games that I'm attending because it's not really working out well for me. 0-1 for my college bet so far. No, we got the Georgia Tech covering a big spread as well. So 1-1, I guess. But yeah, cracking weekend. Yeah, Mr. 50%. That's how we're going to start out. Probably that's how we're going to finish. Cracking weekend. Great to meet some friends and familiar faces and also meet a load of new people as well. Shout out to just JR Mans in Dublin. It was a great spot. That's the place that had the McAfee show. Sadly, we couldn't get in, but we were at the PFI tailgate that Michael McQuaid ran. He did a great job all weekend. He was just everywhere. Just a great weekend. Had by all, and I'm recovered from all the Guinness, which is good because there was a lot of Guinness consumed. But yeah, it was excellent. Let's talk news before we get into the main bulk of the show, which is the preview. Very Cowboys heavy news the last couple of days. Let's start with CeeDee Lamb. He signed his bumper extension, 4 years, $136 million. That I've got the right numbers yet. I think that's right. Yeah. Finally, it did feel like it took forever. But the Cowboys signed up there, wide receiver one for the foreseeable. Byron, are you just glad it's all over?
Yeah, it was always going to get done, but now it's done. It's it is a load off, truthfully. And nobody can do it better than Jerry. So of course it was always going to get done. How could it not?
Yeah, what an interesting tirade that was from Jerry.
Interesting is the word for it. Yeah.
Yeah, just crazy. He's definitely fully senile at this point. But very important. So, is that the first domino to fall? Joe, do you think then that's going to allow the Cowboys to get the next very big contract sorted, which is Dak?
I'm not sure. I'm not quite sure because it feels like I think they're separate. I'm not quite sure if Dak wants to stay. I think that's the big thing. So I don't think if Dak wants to keep it till next year or keeps it next year, he'll probably make even more money. So I think because he already was on a big contract, he's not like CeeDee Lamb. He was on his rookie, so he basically got what he wanted. I don't think he was ever going to get more than Justin Jefferson, and being in Texas helps as well. Having slightly less and with the tax zone. I'm not sure about Dak, and I think they might keep Micah Parsons till next year because there's not been any issues around that. Yeah, I don't think it's happening before the season, so we'll see how they work that. I think it's still all up in the air.
So move for some good news for the Cowboys to some bad news. Deron Bland, who he's been incredible since he came into the NFL, had a particularly sensational year last year with his 9 interceptions and 5 that he took back to the house. I think he's broke his foot. He's going to be out for 6 to 8 weeks. How big a miss is he going to be in that Cowboys defense?
Yeah, expected to be a big miss, obviously. Playmakers can't be replaced easily. And, I'm sure Mike Zimmer probably prefers a lockdown corner than a playmaking corner, I would dare say. Just Zimmer's very conservative and very fundamentals. But, again, Bland's been a great cornerback since he got into the league. So, yeah, I think it is a huge loss. And I think, I've had concerns about Dallas going into this season already, and it just feels like I kind of need everything to go right, I think, to challenge for the division, and not off to a great start in that sense. So.
And I think especially with Diggs coming off the injury as well, you wanted that to have that solid number one down. Now you're throwing, is Diggs going to be the same guy? What's the depth looking like? How's Bland going to look when he comes back as well? Because that kind of injury, especially because he was his foot, right?
Yeah, he broke his foot. Yeah.
You know, if it's not fully right, he rushing back early. It's like easy to re-aggravate that kind of injury. So, yeah, not the best. Good news with the bad news.
Yeah, and also kind of loss of Stephen Gilmore as well. So he kind of didn't have, I think they were having Bland and Diggs, you're kind of fine going, well, we can let Gilmore go. Now you're down to one of them. That could be a problem. An opportunity, I think Kalen Carson's probably the next guy. Obviously, we've got Jordan Lewis. I don't know. Someone else is going to have to step up, I think. Whether it's Mukumamu or Goodwin, someone's going to have to step up for sure. So, yeah, be interesting to see how they go. And last bit of Dallas news, I promise. Dalvin Cook looks like he's signed to the practice squad. Right at the running back room in Dallas hasn't looked good in terms of the names there. Do we think they can get anything out of Dalvin Cook?
Flatly, no. I don't want to be totally negative on it, but I'd be surprised. He's not looked. He was good in Minnesota. His last year, I think he was still kind of struggling on, but these were from Connor Allen on Twitter, Connor Allen NFL. In 2023, of 67 running backs who had 50 or more carries, he averaged 3.19 yards per carry, which was 61st. In EPA per carry, he was 67 out of 67. In yards after contact per carry, he was 63 out of 67. And I mean, those things just kind of confirm what we all see with our eyes. It sucks when running backs get old because it seems that the cliff comes really, really quickly and harshly. I think Zeke is washed as well, but I don't think Dalvin Cook is. Unless he's had a really good offseason and he's got that burst back. And I hope he has, obviously. I love Dalvin Cook as a player. I support the Dallas Cowboys, I think he's done, unfortunately. Hopefully I'm wrong.
Yeah, we'll see. It looks like practice squad first. We'll see how that goes. To the rest. Go on to.
I was going to say, just on the Cowboys cornerbacks, they did trade recently for Andrew Booth from the Vikings, who had an up and down preseason in the 2 games he played. So it's another body, but teams don't trade away good cornerbacks for nothing. So not one I'm hugely confident about, but at least it's somebody else who's played in the NFL before.
Which is always good. Let's move on to cuts first. So yesterday was the deadline. Well, I say yesterday, Tuesday, because this is going out on Thursday. Tuesday was the deadline to get to 53. Any shocks from the cuts, guys? Anyone shout out Byron or Joe? Any kind of ones that you're real surprised at?
I don't think there was any huge surprises. I think Kadarius Toney was like a headline maker just because he's been a big name since he came into the league. I mean, what a bust as a first-round pick. I know he won a Super Bowl, etc. But, yeah. And Bailey Zappi ended up with the Chiefs practice squad after getting released by the Patriots. The Browns kept 4 quarterbacks, which I found interesting, and maybe the indictment on Deshaun Watson's injury / abilities.
/ character.
I'm not sure that bothered about character because they did also bring in Jameis Winston, who has a very sketchy history of himself of untoward touching, should we say. I don't think character is the biggest concern for the Browns. They also gave Deshaun Watson $250 million guaranteed. So, yeah, I'm not sure character is their biggest issue. Unfortunately, Louis Rees-Zammit, Chiefs, got released. As far as I see, he's cleared waivers, so I presume he's going to go back on the Chiefs practice squad, but obviously that's a fluid situation recorded on Wednesday.
Charlie Smith as well.
I was going to say the Saints kicker. I couldn't remember his name instantly, but yeah.
I think he'll land up with the Saints again, I think. I mean, they had such good things to say about him, I think, from what we've heard. So I'm hoping he will land back on the Saints. Practice squad. And again, kind of, he's only barely 12 months into his journey, since he first kicked in American football. So he's doing a hell of a job. And shout out, Charlie. We hope you land land on a practice squad or somebody picks you up. But yeah, it'd be great to see that continue.
Sorry, Jordan, if you had it in mind here, and I'm just kind of rambling on. But the last two I did want to mention that I was kind of surprised that like no one traded like a late conditional pick swap type thing for was the Broncos cutting Tim Patrick, who it seemed like he's had a good camp. I haven't seen him in the preseason, but like rave reviews. And he just got cut outright. And Samaje Perine, again, I'm kind of surprised teams like Dallas with their desperation at running back couldn't take a swing on him as like an RB2 or the Bengals maybe. But yeah, I've just seen now, like literally 30 seconds ago as we're recording, Perine is signed with the Chiefs practice squad, which is an interesting one. They could do with an RB2 behind Isaiah Pacheco, certainly. And yeah, Tim Patrick went to the Lions, which I think that's a great fit. If he can be a functional wide receiver 3 or 4, it's certainly a position they need. So I will finally stop listing every single transaction that was made yesterday. My apologies.
No, I was going to say, just for mine, it's not a shock, but Desmond Mariner getting cutter. Getting cut today. Desmond Ridder getting cut. Obviously,
getting rid of him.
Yeah, exactly.
Getting rid of.
There you go. I'm sure we use that for the for Falcons preview. But yeah, it's a surprise just because obviously they traded him for was it Rondo Moore, who's like a starting wide receiver, so not getting much back. And it's still, I think we talked about this last year, is that how the Falcons went. No wonder Arthur Smith got fired. That they went into that year saying he's our guy, and he's now not even on a team. It's a bit crazy. Obviously, the Vikings feel like you mentioned they're trading away. Their cornerback also releasing Lewis Kine, who both first rounders in the last few years. It's not the best. It's not the best when the first rounder goes after a year or two. Similar to, I think, Tennessee released Caleb Farley as well, who's a couple of years out from being picked highly. And I think the only other one I would say was big. I think it's just because how good this team is the fact that Noah Brown got released. He was probably their third or fourth wide receiver, and now he can't even get on their teams when you look. Then I thought they could have traded him away. There's plenty of teams who need wide receivers, so I think he's certainly going to get picked up by plenty of teams will be after him. But it's a good sign for the Texans that he's not even in their top 5 or 6 wide receivers. So he could go back to the Cowboys. The Cowboys could do with him.
They definitely could.
Definitely could,
And last one I wanted to mention as well, which kind of came out of nowhere over the weekend. Ernest Jones went from being, Rams team captain on defense to traded in like a late 5th and 6th or 6th and 7th pick swap with the Titans. And then just another I find the Titans such a hard one to call this year because it really feels like they are all in, with all the moves they've made. And yet it doesn't feel like they've got a roster that's all in. Like the moves have been all in. But I just find them so fascinating because I struggled to get into I can't remember the exact win total I had them on, but I think it might be 4 or 5 wins. And yet the moves are making, it feels like they should be pushing for the playoffs. So I find that a really interesting one. And yeah, Ernest Jones went from being starting linebacker and team captain to we're going to cut you, so you better find a new home. Very NFL not for long, I guess, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And then the last shout out, just a couple of injuries, and I suppose maybe the biggest one in terms of, draft position, because it was recent. Darius Robinson, the Chiefs' second of the first round picks, is heading to injured reserves just with a calf injury, so I guess maybe not too long. Doesn't really feel like the Cardinals can afford injuries to their first round picks, does it? Especially on that defense.
Yeah, I think we're talking just about their depth the last episode, and they got another injury from the year before BJ, can't remember what his surname is, and then they also traded with the Chiefs another edge rusher. It just feels like it's going to be a fun team to watch, where they're going to probably, a team's going to drop 35, 40 points to them, and then can Kyler and everyone else keep up? Should be exciting for any fancy people who've got Murray or Harrison or any of them wide receivers, because I think it's going to be plenty of points in them games.
Excellent. Cardinals overs. That could be the play for 2024. We'll see. I saw AJ Dillon sadly out with a neck injury. He's gone for the season for the Packers. There's probably more, but we haven't got all day to talk about them. What we do have all day to talk about, though, is the Denver Broncos, because that's the first team we're going to look at in our AFC season preview, division preview, I should say. Let's have a look at the Denver Broncos. No guest for the Broncos. If you are a Broncos fan in the UK, give us a shout out. We could do with a Broncos regular.
I won't
Let's have a
yell
look
at
at
you.
2020. You are.
I won't yell at you, I promise.
Yeah, he's learned his lesson. He did that once. That guy doesn't want to speak to us anymore. 2023 overview for the Broncos. Went 8-9, given kind of everything that went on. To finish third in the division, they missed the playoffs though for an 8th consecutive season. Sean Payton's first year didn't go entirely to plan, as offense and defense both ranked in the bottom 10. Lowlight included being stampeded by Miami in a 70-20 loss and starting 1-5, which was the first time since 1994. Bounced back with 5 wins in a row. Highlight included booking a 16-game losing streak against the Kansas City Chiefs in Week 8. Yeah, the Broncos beat the Chiefs. And then Russell Wilson was put in the stable for the last 2 games while the Broncos were trying to skank him out of his injury guarantee. Joe, we'll let you take this one. How would you sum up the 2023 season for the Broncos?
It was a weird one, wasn't it? It was. I think if you just asked me what was the Broncos' record, I would have struggled to say 8-9. It felt like they had a terrible year, but I think from the year before, I think anything improving, was a positive, and I think the offense was better under Sean Payton. I think Wilson did play better. I know they had a rough start, and the bottom 10 in both rankings probably didn't help at the beginning. But I think both improved. I think the offense improved. I think the defense improved as well. I don't think it was amazing as it has been, but I still think they've got a coordinator in there who, is one of the top ones, and I think a few teams wanted him. So, and the fact they went on a stretch, so that they won 1-5, but then they won the next couple, 5 in a row, and they only just missed out on the playoffs. When you look at some of the defeats they had, where it was like a toss-up, where they could have been the Steelers of last year as well, where 1 or 2 victories go either way, and somehow they're in the playoffs.
Imagine if they come across Miami again in the playoffs after that. That'd have been wild.
That would have been crazy. And they actually beat like 4 playoff teams as well. So they beat the Packers, Chiefs, Bills, and Browns. And they only gave up 80 points in them games. So like average of 60. So they beat like good teams. So it's just a weird kind of year where it felt like, they must have been terrible. But when you look at it, it's like, they actually had a productive year, and they're hoping to push on.
Excellent. Let's have a look at then some off-season headlines for the Broncos. I should have read these before. Russell Wilson's saddling up for a new team, but the Broncos are left paying $39 million of his deal. Is that the worst trade ever? It's going to be pretty close, isn't it? Him and Deshaun, the way it's going. Wilson decision leaves $85 million in dead cap space. Did not give Sean much room to improve this team. Number 12, the 12 overall draft pick, Bo nicks the starting job from Jared Stidham. And Wilson will be the first rookie quarterback to start for the Broncos since John Elway. Something tells me it's not going to go quite as well for Bo Nix. New wide receiver stable, as Broncos say, bye Jude E, who is shipped out to the Browns, and Tim Patrick also released, as we've just discussed. Let's start with Russ. We've got to start with Russ, right? That's definitely the biggest story of the Denver Broncos off-season. How to create that mess. And, just how terrible a position has this put the Broncos in, having, all this dead cap money and really needing to inject some talent into this team on both sides of the ball.
I mean, it's not ideal, is it? Let's be fair. But
great analysis.
Last year, the 4 biggest teams with dead cap all made the playoffs. The Bucks, the Rams, the Packers, the Eagles all made the playoffs, and they were the 4 biggest teams with dead cap last year. So it's not a death knell for your team. But those 4 teams all had a lot of talent as well alongside it. So I think the Broncos are a fairly talent-deficient organization right now, and they also have no money to spend. So having no cap room isn't the worst thing in the world if you've got a good team. But having no money and no players, I mean, don't mean to spell it out too much, but it's not good news, is it? Like,
it's not usually a recipe for success.
No, not usually. And Sean Payton, not a patient man either, I would dare say. So I'm very interested how this year goes, because I don't think he's going to enjoy 2 struggle seasons. I know they overperformed last year in the win-loss totals, which is fair enough. And I think if they can get to 8 wins again this year, that would be a huge success. But I think that'll be a huge success. I'm not sure if they're going to.
And I'll just put the dead cap into perspective, by the way. So it represents the single highest cap for one player, and it accounts for 20.5% of Denver's adjusted salary cap this year. So a player who's not even on your team, who another team's only paying $1 or $2 million for, he's taking up 20% of your salary cap.
Who they are likely going to play against in week 2 as well, just to find out. They play the Steelers in week 2 and are probably going to play Russ.
But to be honest, the Broncos probably would pay to play against Russell Wilson, how he looks. So it probably works out that way. That $39 million well spent, they'll probably say, if they get that victory.
Be an interesting new way to buy wins in the NFL. Joe, just to go to you, Bo Nix drafted at 12, so he's the last of that run of quarterbacks, the crazy run that we saw on draft night. He's looked good in preseason. We've seen lots of quarterbacks look good in preseason, though, however, over the years. Well, what do you think the odds are that he translates it to the regular season?
I think what helps is having Sean Payton. I know not everyone's the biggest Sean Payton fan, but he's the ideal quarterback for his system. He's accurate. He's got plenty of experience. And I think he's just looked a solid quarterback. I think everyone, us included, wasn't the biggest fans when he went there. It wasn't a huge surprise that the Broncos got him, and there was a whole thing where Sean Payton was trying to say, "Oh, I'm the smartest person in the league" by pretending that we didn't want him and all this kind of stuff. But he seemed like he was their guy, and I think it fits perfectly. Obviously, having all that experience in college, I think there's going to be more and more quarterbacks like him coming through, where they probably make just as much money in college that they will on the rookie contract. So I think it is gonna. I think it's been a bright spot. It's been a surprise, and I think his game will suit Sean Payton's style. So I think he is going to look good, and he's going to. I think he's going to put up some numbers. I think, the wide receiver room's not mind blowing, but they've got enough pieces and they've got enough depth where I think they can actually show a few things just because how Sean Payton plays and how he's looked. It's certainly been, for me, a surprise.
Well, certainly the system helped in Oregon, but he had a monster year last year, over 4,000 yards, 40 touchdowns to 3 interceptions, and a 77% completion percentage. Gets the ball out quick, but capable of making big plays as well. So, yeah, he's an interesting one. This might be the year he finally wins the Heisman as well. I feel like that conversation's gone on a lot. It's like every year for kind of 4 years. Oh, this year's going to be the year that Bo Heisman wins the Heisman. No, Bo Nix wins the Heisman.
And there's a reason I put Byron's man in the bottom corner as well, because he could be a big year for Mims Jr. I wonder if Byron's going to stay on that train, see if he can get the ball out early and see him going down the field with plenty of yards to I don't know how you feel about him, Byron.
Should we do an over-under on how many times during the preview episode during the regular season Byron mentions, I think Marvin Mims is going to have a great game here, or I like Marvin Mims for this prop, or I like Marvin Mims for fantasy game day / fantasy?
I mean, I'd take the over at 17, so... oh, wait, 16, sorry. It's 18 weeks, only 17 for the Broncos, yeah. I mean, you're looking at a Pro Bowler there, though, let's be fair.
Pro Bowl returner, is that what we're potentially going with?
Pro Bowler,
yeah. Pro Bowl, yeah.
Made the Pro Bowl as a rookie. I think that's pretty impressive, generally. Yeah. One of only 2 Pro Bowlers on this team from last year. Simmons got released, and Surtain and Marvin Mims, the only 2 Pro Bowlers from last year on the Broncos. So, yeah, I think that's pretty impressive. I think that's... and I do think his skill set will match up with the Sean Payton offense if Sean Payton finally uses him. And who else do they have at wide receiver?
Yeah,
that was my question. Were we supposed to answer that?
Well, they got Colin Sutton and Josh Reynolds, so very a lot of 2s, 3s, it feels like.
yeah, if Mims can't get work this year, I will still blame Sean Payton, but like, it's probably not a great sign.
So, well, let's have a look then at some moves for the Broncos.
Just while we're talking of the dead cap man himself, bit of breaking news: Russell Wilson has been named the Steelers starter.
Feels like it was another kind of begrudging one, like the Raiders one.
Yeah, we don't need to analyze it here. It just literally broke on my phone, so I thought, I might as well mention it because we just talked about him, and it increases likelihood they will play him in week 2, like you mentioned. So,
get your breaking news here at Good Teams and Great Teams Cover. That would work if we were a live streamed podcast. Doesn't work.
People will probably know by the time this goes out tomorrow.
That's the day before it gets released. Free. Zach, we talked about Zach Wilson. Zach Wilson is there. I think that's probably it. Josh Reynolds in, you mentioned. Cody Barton, Franklin Myers in on a trade as well. And then we've talked about Russ going. Jerry Jeudy, Cushenberry gone, Simmons gone, and he ended up at the Falcons as well. Let's have a look at this draft. Bo Nix headline, of course. Jonah Ellis. Is it Elise or Ellis? I think it's Elise. Ellis. Troy Franklin, let's talk about him. So, wide receiver that Bo Nix is very, very comfortable with.
Yeah.
Jeff Oregon, he feels like he slid down the board a long way from where he's potentially projected to be drafted. Was this just a team trying to get its first-round quarterback comfortable?
That'd be my best guess, yeah. I mean, he really fell down the board. I think he ended up like the 17th wide receiver, 18th wide receiver drafted. And he hasn't had a good preseason or camp from all accounts. I think Devon Vale in the 7th round is more likely to be getting starting player ahead of him. So it wasn't a player I was in love with in college, truthfully, Troy Franklin. I didn't expect him to go as late as he did, certainly. I thought he'd be a round 3 pick at latest and higher up the actual wide receiver ranks. But yeah, it seems like the NFL didn't want much to do with him either. Obviously, yeah, like you say, he does have that connection with Bo Nix, but doesn't seem to be accounting too much in training camp or the preseason.
He had such a big year, and that was big contributing factor. He's nearly 1,400 yards and 14 touchdowns from 81 grabs. He was obviously the huge part of that Oregon offense. So yeah, it does just seem he's just not translated, and yeah, it'd be a struggle. It's kind of felt like that could be a bit of a bargain in the 4th round, but clearly there's a reason why he wasn't taken earlier. Many reasons why he might not have been taken earlier. Anyone else from that draft class you're expecting to make a big impact for the Broncos, especially because they are struggling talent-wise?
I think I like the Audric Esteem. I ended up watching the last preseason of the Broncos game, and he had some bursts. He looked good. He's currently ranked, I think, a 3rd running back, but he made the squad. So, you got to have plenty of running backs during the season. So I think he's definitely going to get some games. And like Devon Vele is slated as the 4th wide receiver. So, I think how Sean Payton works, he could see some game time as well. But I don't know if anyone else will have a huge role in the team.
Excellent. Cool. Good stuff. Let's have a look at some odds for the Broncos. Win line, totals over under 5.5. Where have we got the Broncos, chaps? Joe, you've revealed there the Super Bowl. That's what's going on. But yeah, over under 5.5. Where have we got you can just leave it, just fine. Where have we got the Broncos? How many wins do you have the Denver Broncos at, guys?
Less than 5.5. Let me see my actual number. They'll probably get more than this in reality because that's the way this works. I have them at 2-15 now, so I think they're talent bereft.
Talent bereft. Joe, how many wins have you got the Broncos at?
I think I'm going to go over. I think they could get 6 or 7 wins. I just think they're playing the NFC South, so they could easily get 2 or 3, maybe 2 wins out of that. I think they'll get a game out of the Raiders, probably a game out of the Chargers. That's 4 wins there. And then there's a few where, like I said, they beat some teams, like they could beat Pittsburgh. They could easily beat like Seattle. I don't think it's that kind of league where I don't think there's a huge gap. I like Vance Joseph as a DC. And if Bo Nix shows out, then I think it could be a kind of Sean Payton kind of team, which wins 7 or 8. So I'll probably go over if I had to choose.
Interesting. Yeah, I'm on 6. I'm not confident on betting the over though, but I've got them 6 and 11. So yeah, rough season for the Broncos. Let's just finish off.
If you are betting the over, by the way, that is MGM's most popular bet of this season on the over-unders. 93% are better on the over of the Broncos at 5.5.
Interesting.
Yeah, I found that an interesting one too, because I'm so on the under. So it's like, oh, somebody knows something, and 93% of people are betting the over. So
yeah, I mean, like I say, it was a disaster. Like how that how they started. Definitely some credit in terms of kind of how they bounced back, because it was such a disastrous start.
Yeah.
Heads were being called for very early, and to kind of come back from a team getting beat 70-20 like that could have just gone the other way and just given up. So
yeah,
but it didn't. It bounced back. So yeah, but yeah, I'm struggling. Like I say, but that schedule isn't entirely treacherous, is it? You've got to play the Chiefs twice, but the Bengals, they've got the Ravens, and then everything else. You think, oh, maybe they could be in all those games. Sean Payton revenge game at the Saints as well.
Yeah.
In week 7. That's our week 7 Thursday night football matchup. What a cracker that will be. Let's have a look at the odds, Joe, for the division winners. The 16-1 or plus 1,600 to win the division. 75-1 plus 7,500 to win the AFC, and 125-1 to win the Super Bowl. I'll happily give you 15,000 to 1 on that, because that isn't happening. What would be a good year for the Broncos, guys?
I think for me, it's similar to like a couple of these teams with rookie quarterbacks. That Bo Nix just looks like a NFL starter and a person you can, he'll be there for the next few years. I think once you've got that sorted, then they can build the rest of the roster. Hopefully have a bit more money next year and keep getting more players in and improve that way. But yeah, I think if Bo Nix looks a great player, win 6 or 7 games, hopefully get like a top 10 pick, then you're hopefully set for the next few years. Because Broncos are one of them teams where it's strange that you think of them as being a successful organization, but I think they've had an absolutely stinker over last few years. I think obviously missing out playoffs 8 in a row. I think they've had a losing record for like a good 6 or 7 of them as well. So I think it's just that the future's bright and they've actually got a competent quarterback would help.
Yeah, that's come away. They had quite an aging team from the team that obviously won the Super Bowl 50, and Peyton finishing up, and a lot of old, it's been tough to turn it over. And yeah, they still seem to be struggling with that, but maybe this is the start of it. Byron, what do you think is a good season? Somewhat similar?
Yeah, I mean, if they can get towards 500 record, but yeah, crucially, Bo Nix is the man. That is like the mark of a good season, I think.
Excellent. Bo Nix being the man.
Oh, and Marvin Mims repeats his Pro Bowl. Would be a big one.
Marvin Mims' second consecutive Pro Bowl, yeah. No All-Pro, just Pro Bowl, yeah.
I mean, Pro Bowl, All-Pro would be a real good season, but yeah, just take Pro Bowl for now, It's the Broncos.
Not, that's your second Marvin Mims drop already, and with not even at the regular season yet. Cool. We're moving on. We're going to go talk to Brendon Booth. He's joined us. He's joining us, I should say. Keep the facade up. We're going to be speaking to Brendon about Las Vegas Raiders. So let's head over and chat with Brendon. And we're on to the Las Vegas Raiders portion of the show. We've got a very special guest joining us. Returning guest to Good Teams Win, Great Teams Cover. Last seen on our live show for the draft, making a martini, I think, is what Brendon was
showing
making.
You guys how to make a smoked pickle and jalapeno martini.
Yes, and it looked incredible, and we have taken the tips for sure. Brendon, welcome back to Good Teams Win, Great Teams Cover. It's a pleasure to have you on. You're going to be our Las Vegas Raiders expert, but how have you been? How's your summer been going, Brendon?
I've been fantastic. I just got over a little bout of COVID, but been been working a bunch and just met a whole bunch of people at the Fantasy Football Expo at the Pro Football Hall of Fame. So I got to go see all the Raiders busts that are in there and the rings and jerseys and all that stuff. So having been a Raiders fan as long as I have, it was a nice walk through memory lane, and there were some other teams that were represented there too. It wasn't just a Raiders thing.
Excellent. This sounds like you've been a very busy man. Fellow Manchester United fan as well, but we won't talk too much about how that's been going so far.
If we could just forget what happened Saturday, we're good. What is with all of the stoppage time losses? That doesn't happen. And
Ten Hag time.
I think what?
It used to be Fergie time when Man U got all the late winners. Now it's Ten Hag time when
Yeah.
it gets the 90th minute and defenders seem to forget. I mean, that was really bad on Saturday. I don't like Man United, so I enjoyed it, I'm afraid to say for you guys. But even as just a neutral viewer, it was like, guys, there's 9 Man United players in the box here, and there's like 3 Brighton players.
Is it Casemiro that just went wandering? He just ran away.
It was absolutely staggering.
They have a good counter game. Now all they need is just a good midfield game, good defenders, and a good goalie and goalkeeper, and they'll be
Seems
fine.
a lot, yeah. Seems a lot. But let's not sadden ourselves or
Sure.
or make Byron's day by talking about how terrible Manchester United are.
We don't waste all the afternoon talking about teams that used to have former glories and are now struggling.
Yeah, we couldn't possibly do that, could we? No. Brendon, what have you got coming up? Wise, we know obviously you're big in the fantasy space and fantasy game. What have you got coming up?
Well, if you want fantasy stuff, find me on Twitter at BigBonedFFB, BIGBONEDED FFB. It's long. But if you just want NFL stuff, I write for Player Profiler News. That's at playerprofiler.com/news. And we fill up, our news desk fills up the archive with that's the archive. We fill up with the latest breaking news in the NFL, plus a bunch of different platforms. And then I have a Raiders show, comes on at 8 p.m. Pacific time every Tuesday. So I guess that would be 4:30 in the morning for you guys. So go ahead and get up about 4, make yourself a pot of coffee or some tea, and join me at 4 a.m. Tomorrow morning.
Excellent. Busy man. And yeah, make sure you are following Brendon.
Oh, sorry. That's at the Undroppables on YouTube. And we have a series called Uncovered. We are trying to get to the point where we have all 32 teams. It's non-fantasy. It's just like news related, but we have a separate content creator for every team. I'm the Raiders representative. We just added the Vikings. We just added we have the Cowboys. We're getting close. I think we were at about 20 now. We just need about 12 and we'll be good.
Nice, good stuff. One for every team. So yeah, plenty going on. Make sure you go give Brendon a follow and capture everything that he's got going on because it is absolutely fantastic. And we're nearly there. We are 10 days, 8 days away now.
Yeah.
Somewhere around that from the big kickoff. And let's get talking about the Las Vegas Raiders then. That's what we've got here for, Brendon. So let's have a chat around the Raiders. So 2023, let's start there. Let's start with how we got here for the Las Vegas Raiders. Very interesting year. Tumultuous, maybe, could be said.
Yep.
Finished 8-9. I'll start that again. The Raiders went 8-9 to finish second in the AFC West. Missed out on the playoffs. McDaniel's Vegas run was a bust. He folded fast after scathing criticism from the players. Gamble on interim head coach Antonio Pierce pays off as he led the Raiders to a 5-4 finish. Jimmy G flops as he's benched for rookie Aiden O'Connell. Some highlights for the Raiders included the Thursday Night Football pummeling of the Los Angeles Chargers and a Christmas Day win over the Chiefs in Kansas.
Yeah.
Brendon, just how would you sum up how 2023 went for the Raiders?
Well, to borrow from your countryman, Mr. Charles Dickens, I would say it was a tale of two seasons. Basically, we went into the year looking at a beleaguered Jimmy Garoppolo and a completely outclassed Josh McDaniels, coming off of him scuttling Derek Carr, and it didn't look great. And the season started off about how we thought it would, and then we made the right decision, got rid of McDaniels, brought Pierce in. The team rallied behind him, similar to what they did when John Gruden left behind Rich Bisaccia, and finished really strong. It was fun to watch. They had a top 10 defense for the first time in I don't know how long, and should be a top 5 defense this year. So things as they ended, although we missed the playoffs by a game or two, you shouldn't make the playoffs with an 8-9 record in the first place. But if we could have managed to squeak out 2 more wins, we would have made the playoffs. But to finish the season the way we did was like it made us very optimistic for what's to come in 2024.
Yeah, and with that, kind of, how excited now are you about what it feels like a true leader in Antonio Pierce, something that kind of Josh McDaniels wasn't, and he's shown us this, I think, before in his previous experience as an NFL head coach and just how he's behaved. Yeah, how it's exciting to have somebody who is a true leader as the head coach.
Extremely exciting. So I may have mentioned this on your show before, but there are really 3 different kinds of head coaches. There are the X's and O's guys, there are the leaders of men, and then there are the rare Mike McDaniel type coaches who do both really well. And Antonio Pierce isn't necessarily an X's and O's guys. It's not like he has a scheme, but he's a leader of men, and they really get behind him. He brought over Luke Getsy. Luke Getsy has had success as an offensive coordinator with the right personnel when he was in Green Bay. Didn't quite work out in Chicago, but he does have a scheme that fits the personnel that the Raiders have, and should be a benefit moving forward. So yeah, I love the Antonio Pierce hire. We learned our lesson after Rich Bisaccia. We knew that the players were behind him, but we wanted to bring in a system guy, and nobody could get behind McDaniels. He lost the team immediately, and that was basically nobody bought into what he wanted to do. It was just too complicated. He was too much of a jerk, and the results were on the field.
Yeah, we certainly saw that for sure. Certainly, players that weren't playing for their coach. What went so wrong with Jimmy G? I think he was supposed to somebody to bring some, I guess, stability to be able to kind of deliver on this system that McDaniels wanted. What went so disastrously wrong?
I think the injuries caught up to him. The other thing is that his audition, essentially, the number of games that he played in with the Patriots and the 49ers, he was very insulated in terms of the roster that was around him, and he wasn't asked to do a whole lot. McDaniels asked too much of him. You could see, if anybody watched, if Netflix UK has the Receivers series, and you saw any of the highlights or lowlights of Davante Adams trying to run down the field and catch Garoppolo passes, he just couldn't find Davante Adams anywhere. Davante Adams is one of the supreme route runners in the NFL, and he is open. All you have to do is just put the ball in a certain spot and he'll get to it. Jimmy G couldn't do that. He was constantly underthrowing him, constantly overthrowing him, throwing hospital balls to him. He just was not very accurate. And it was the first time really that he had that job kind of secured, and he absolutely failed. I think the way you put it, flops, is perfect.
Yeah.
And I think it is kind of telling, just speaking on Davante Adams there, that, on the receiver series, we've seen a lot of frustration from Davante Adams, unsurprisingly. And I know Davante Adams has played with good quarterbacks in his career, but you've never seen him be that animated in a negative sense before. Right. So I think it's really telling how bad the quarterback play was. Like, obviously, we can see it as fans and, analysts watching it. It's like, this isn't great. But to see someone like Davante Adams, who, he has been a consummate professional in his entire career, as far as I can recall, kind of melt down like that so much, so often, I think he's really telling us to what they expected from Jimmy Garoppolo and what actually ended up coming in his performances. Yeah.
And he was kind of sold. They sold him on coming to the Raiders to play with Derek Carr, who was his college roommate. They were best friends. And he entered a situation where the core of the team was essentially led by Derek Carr, who he was the team leader from the year before. And Josh Jacobs, Hunter Renfrow, Darren Waller, and now Devontae Adams. They were a core of leadership. And Derek Carr and Josh McDaniels didn't get along. And what wound up happening was McDaniels sent Carr off, completely like buried Hunter Renfrow, traded Waller away, and left Devontae Adams out there going, what just happened to the team that I was told I was coming to? He had to agree to a new contract and to come over. He had to agree to the trade, and he was sold a bill of goods that wasn't what happened. And I can absolutely understand the frustration, especially when he's out there just getting his head hammered around, getting his shoulder busted because Jimmy Garoppolo, who wasn't the reason that he went to Las Vegas in the first place, is the garbage quarterback that is throwing him the ball. So understandable.
And well, interesting to see maybe what happens with Devontae Adams. There's some we can get your thoughts on it, I guess. If potentially he could be a candidate for a trade mid-season. We'll see. But off-season headlines, Pierce gets permanent Vegas residency, as we've talked about. Spent big on Christian Wilkins, 4-year, $110 million contract. Do the Raiders now have the best 1-2 punch in the league with Crosby and Wilkins on that line? Gardner Minshew, begrudgingly named starting quarterback, it seemed, after edging out Aidan O'Connell in an uninspiring camp battle. Could we see offensive struggles on the cards? This might be harsh, but do the Raiders have the worst quarterback in the league? Devontae Adams is unhappy. No more Josh Jacobs. Let's start with Christian Wilkins before we talk through the rest. How happy were you to see that signing? Wilkins previously at the Dolphins, now with the Raiders. It seems they're going to create a very formidable defensive line.
Yeah, I absolutely love that free agency deal. I think it was the signing of the year in the entire NFL. To finally, I mean, there were times where Max Crosby was getting triple teamed last year and winning. So if you reduce that to mere double teams, or if you have to put him in single coverage or single team blocking because Wilkins is there and he's demanding double teams in the middle, and you have the emergence of Malcolm Kuntz on the other side, and you've got John Jenkins or Adam Butler, who are very capable interior defensive linemen, it just opens things up for Max Crosby, who he had an incredible year last year, definitely in contention for Defensive Player of the Year, although there are a couple guys out there who are they're more highly regarded, even if they're not as productive. So it's going to be hard for him to get over that hump. So essentially what you did was you created a situation where it's going to be hard to match up against Max Crosby, who has the best motor in the league. He's got the best moves. He's fast. It's going to be a nightmare for offenses. They're going to have to get rid of the ball really quick. And I think this defensive secondary is they're going to benefit as well, because they're not going to have to spend too much time in coverage. They're going to be able to do a lot of things with their looks and changing looks, and it's just going to help all around. And it starts on the defensive line, and the Raiders address that.
Yeah, I think it's a great move. I think we've talked as well at length, and certainly I think all of us have been in agreement, myself, Byron and Joe, all big fans of Max Crosby, and I certainly think he's up there now with, he's that same level as Garrett, as Watt, as Parsons, as Bosa. I think he's there. I think he belongs with those guys because he's just been phenomenal, and I like your shot. I think he's got a real good opportunity to win Defensive Player of the Year this year.
Yeah, the thing that separates him. The thing that separates him is his time on the field. Yep. He plays 92% of the snaps. The other guys don't do that. They specialize in TJ Watt may be the only other one that plays against the run as much as Crosby does. Everybody else is more, not a specialist, but they tend to come off the field. They're pass rush or run stoppers only.
Yeah.
Max does everything. He's out there all the time and winning.
Yeah.
And that's kind of why I love this Christian Wilkins signing. I mean, other than his talent, Christian Wilkins doesn't come off the field either. I think he was 3 in total DT snaps last year. Max Crosby was number 1 on DT or DN snaps last year. Neither of them guys take a breath,
right?
And it doesn't impact them. Like, that is a wonderful thing to have. All 3 downs, you're facing Christian Wilkins and you're facing Max Crosby. That's not pleasant.
Right, and they have the pieces around them to supplement that. So Malcolm Kuntz is he is a good edge rusher, and Adam Butler is good interior. John Jenkins is good interior. And if you have all those pieces in place, then the whole rest of the defense can work. And I think Patrick Graham is in for a big season.
Moving to the offensive side of the ball, Brendan, are you worried that the Raiders are in a similar or the same situation again with heading into the season with Gardner Minshew now named as quarterback, despite kind of Aiden O'Connell having that job the past, 8-10 games of the season, whatever it was last year? Are you worried it's kind of maybe the Jimmy G situation might repeat itself with Gardner Minshew? We know we've seen Gardner Minshew a lot and come in and can do good things over short periods of time. Where are you at with Gardner Minshew as the starter?
So I'm waffling. I'm going back and forth simply because I've seen Gardner Minshew and I've seen Aiden O'Connell, and I know what Aiden O'Connell brings and I know what Gardner Minshew brings. And apparently what Gardner Minshew brings is more important to this offense running, at least at the beginning of the season, in the Raiders' eyes, than what Aiden O'Connell brings. Now, if you go back and you watch tape, you watch that Chargers game, you watch the first half of that Chiefs game, if you take away some of the mistakes he made in Miami, including an incredible play by Jalen Ramsey that he would have picked off any quarterback in that situation, Aiden O'Connell is a very, very accurate passer. He's just not a mobile guy. He also is very conservative, and he just hits his spots rather than trying to create and move the ball down the field or push the ball down the field. He moves the ball down the field. He doesn't push it down the field. And Gardner Minshew is the opposite. He breaks the pocket. He tries to improvise. His arm isn't quite as strong and he's not as accurate. But if they want somebody who's going to be able to do that, to play that kind of game, Aiden O'Connell is not that guy. I like Aiden O'Connell, and I was very disappointed to see that Antonio Pierce said that it was O'Connell's job to lose. Nobody thought that he lost the job. He just didn't go out there and win it. So when they had made the announcement, they kind of changed the narrative a little bit. They didn't say that O'Connell lost it. They said that O'Connell didn't take it by the horns or didn't go run out there and separate himself. Okay, well, if that's the case, then you have all the tape from last year to go off of. But apparently Luke Getsy wants to do something more with the more mobile quarterback. They've got Colton Miller is kind of banged up to start the year. Jackson Powers Johnson, who is set for a big role, is banged up to start the year. So maybe they want a little bit more escapability they've got the Ravens, the Chargers, and the Ravens and the Chargers at least to deal with in the early part of the season. So they got Khalil Mack and Joey Bosa, and then they've got the Ravens defense. So they might want somebody to be a little bit more mobile. It was uninspiring, especially if you were reading the reports that were coming out of camp. But I still think in the long term, Aiden O'Connell is a much more accurate passer, and he can do more for the passing game, which leads to the run game and what Luke Getsy wants to focus on, especially in 12 personnel with Brock Bowers flexed out and Michael Mayer in line doing the blocking. Mayer can block too, running a lot with Zamir White, spelling him with Alexander Madison. I think that's what they want the focus of the offense to be. And then you've got slot god Jacoby Myers and Devontae Adams, who's a route god, and Brock Bowers out, and Trey Tucker as a deep threat. So I think that a lot of people are really, really underrating the offense based on who the quarterback is. And we've seen teams win Super Bowls with less than at quarterback, but their defense is there, and it looks like everything is kind of in place to at least make an honest run at it.
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting one. Like I say, I've thoroughly enjoyed Minshew's on that list of quarterbacks to me who I just thoroughly enjoy watching because chaos and anything can happen, and usually does. And
he's got swagger and attitude and a great mustache, and
he does not lack self-confidence, Gardner Minshew, that's for sure.
No, you got to love the guy, and I do. Talent-wise, I'm not quite as sold, but I mean, if it takes that swagger to win football games, then hey, send him out there.
Yeah, absolutely. We've seen it with other guys. I've seen other guys make it work for sure. So yeah, be interesting to see how he goes. And how long the leash do you think Gardner Minshew's got? Do you think that, if it does go wrong early, do you think he could be pulled out and Aidan O'Connell, I can't even say his name, AOC be put back in?
I think that first quarter of the season is going to be what makes or breaks Gardner Minshew. If he goes 0-4 and he has more interceptions thrown than touchdowns, both passing and running, I think by week 5, Aidan O'Connell is the starter. But if he goes out and he goes 3-1 or 4-0, and it looks like the thing to kind of keep in mind is that you have guys who it takes them a few years in the league to kind of learn what's going on. You look at Baker Mayfield, you look at what Sam Darnold is about to do in Minnesota, hopefully for his sake. You look at later breakouts, Geno Smith, Jordan Love held a clipboard for a couple years. Aaron Rodgers did the same thing. Peyton Manning in his rookie year was, highly regarded, and he went 1-15, I want to say, threw more interceptions than touchdowns, and then following that became Peyton Manning. So there is a world in which Gardner Minshew suddenly figures it out this year. Didn't look like it from the preseason, but it's not out of the question. You know what I mean? And as long as they keep him safe and they're playing matchups, and it's hard for defenses to match up with this offense, then I think he should be okay. But again, if he goes 0-4 and throws more interceptions than passing touchdowns and rushing touchdowns, he's gone.
Well, the Colts were right there with him, weren't they, at the end of the season? They only just missed out on making the playoffs, and he started, 13, 14 games. So, yeah.
The alternative was Sam Ellinger, so...
Yeah, they didn't have much chance, but yeah, he showed he could win games. I think that's the key thing, isn't it? For the Raiders.
There's a classic quote about when Peyton Manning was in Indianapolis, and one of the coaches was asked why none of the other quarterbacks were getting first team reps in practice, and he said, "Well, if Peyton goes down, we're fucked. So there's no point in anybody practicing because." If that were to happen. And that's kind of the situation that the Colts were in last year. They were just like, all right, it's Minshew. And if neither Minshew or O'Connell work out, then it doesn't matter anyway.
Yeah. Sure. Okay. Let's have a look at some of the key moves then. Free agency. Draft. We've talked about some of them already. Gardner Minshew being one of them, Christy Wilkins the other, Andrews P, Alexander Mattington. That was an interesting one. Quick one I wanted to ask you, Brendon, was around the running backs. So Mattinson, White kind of broke out with a few big games. Is there value in White from a fantasy football perspective?
Absolutely, and I'll tell you why. Number one, Alexander Madison is not it. He hasn't. He was given the opportunity, couldn't do it. If he's getting 7 to 10 carries a game, that's fine. Zamir White, when Josh Jacobs went down last season, in the 4 games that he played, that he started, he had a 4.2 yards per carry average. Now his touchdowns weren't there. The offense wasn't really producing a whole lot. But when he had the ball, he was averaging close to 100 yards per game in total offense and 4.2 yards per carry. If you take 4.2 yards per carry at 21 rushes per game, which is what he was doing, and you extrapolate that over a 17-game season, he's in the 1,500 to 1,700 yard range. And if he's doing that, the touchdowns are going to come. He's good for a couple targets a game. He can increase. One of the things the drawbacks about him coming out from Georgia was that he didn't have a whole lot of experience catching the ball. That doesn't mean that he can't. We've seen guys like Kenneth Walker that didn't have much receiving upside in the draft, but when push came to shove, they were more than capable. He was in a system in Georgia that threw the ball to James Cook and handed the ball off to Zamir White. It doesn't mean he can't catch. It just means that he didn't, or he wasn't employed to. So he's fully capable of that. So 1,500 yards, not out of the question for him as long as he stays healthy and gets his 20 carries per game in the perfect Luke Getsy offense. And in fantasy, I've been smashing Zamir White all over the place just because he doesn't have the cachet that other backs do. He wasn't the starter last year, but Jacobs moved on. They need a guy to carry the load, and he showed in at least a 4-game audition that he's capable of doing it.
Excellent. We saw from a draft perspective on draft night how happy you were with the pick of Brock Bowers at 13. Who else out of that draft class are you expecting to make a big impact in 2024?
Well, here's the thing about this draft class. So if I'm just starting at the very bottom, MJ Devonshire and Trey at cornerback and Trey Taylor at safety. Trey Taylor won the best defensive back in college football award last year, and he was drafted in the 7th round. MJ Devonshire is a high upside guy, drafted in the 7th round. Dylan Lobby had 700 yards receiving as a running back last year, handled kick and punt return duties, had 2,500 yards for over the course of his last 2 seasons at University of New Hampshire, 6th round pick. Tommy Eichenberg is right out of the mold of Robert Spillane, went to Ohio State, looked up to A.J. Hawk when he was growing up. He's the prototypical run-stopping linebacker. The Cameron Richardson is a very, very long, very fast cover corner. He's not a ball hawk. I don't think he had any interceptions in college somehow, but he's very good in coverage. So you look at that draft, and the thing that said that the initial thought as a fan is, holy crap, Tom Telesco killed it. But that's not true. The reality is this is one of the deepest draft classes overall in terms of talent that we've ever seen. You've got guys who could step in and start in the 6th and 7th round on every team in this league. So essentially the Raiders were just kind of picking and choosing, but everybody, 250 players in this draft were all talented. It's a new era of football. Then you get down to Delmar Glaze. He showed in the preseason that he's as capable of passing offensive linemen in pass protection as there is in the rookie class. We'll see how he works out in the run game. And then you have Jackson Powers Johnson, who won the best center in all of college football award last season. So top to bottom, their draft class was stacked. Trey Taylor's going to start on the injured reserve, but they already have a stable of 4 very capable safeties anyway. So he can take his time. It's not really going to matter. There are some developmental players in there, but they all are super, super talented, and it was just a fantastic draft. And that's not even when you get to Brock Bowers, who would have been, based on college metrics, would have been the wide receiver 4 in the class. He was the tight end 1. He was the only tight end in the last 5 years that was better than Michael Mayer, who's already there. We saw in his freshman year at Georgia, I mean, I remember watching him play and going, I'm taking him in the 1st round of my rookie drafts when he comes out. You know what I mean? Like, the talent was already there. He was supposed to be a top 10 pick, according to the experts or whatever, and he somehow happened to fall to 13. The Raiders snatched him up. He's already lined up at halfback and fullback this season, or this preseason. He lines up in the slot. He's a capable blocker. He's just an absolute monster of an offensive weapon, and he's eating my pizza.
We knew sort of, that you were real happy from your reaction on draft night. It was fantastic when you joined us. The Raiders have had challenges with their 1st round picks. I think that's fair to say. That may be a polite way of saying that the last few years. What makes this different? What makes you so certain that the Raiders have hit this one out of the park when they've had to kind of struggles for the last 5 and 6 years with their 1st round picks?
There are 2 things at work when a team makes a draft pick. And number 1 is the regime that scouts and does the talent evaluation. And number 2 is the coaching staff that is able to develop the players. And I don't think that in the last 5 or 10, well, it's been a while since the Raiders have had a system in place and identified the correct talent. Now, I don't know if any of you guys were watching when Cleveland Farrell was taken with the number 4 pick, and Josh Hines Allen was still on the board, and the Brian Burns was still out there, and I lost my mind. They've made a lot of mistakes, but this is a different scouting team than was around in the Gruden era. This is a different coaching staff, developmental staff than was around in Gruden or McDaniel's era. It's a completely different regime. And Tom Telesco, if we look back at some of the talent that he took out of the draft in the Chargers organization, he hit on some people. He knows how to evaluate talent. He identified Austin Eckler. Nobody knew who Austin Eckler was, and he became Austin Eckler. He identified Justin Herbert as a high upside guy that was miscoached by Brandon Staley. So Telesco is a good evaluator of talent. Now it's just up to the team to develop that talent. And I think that they have the guys in place that are going to be able to do that.
Excellent, and yeah, we hope for sure that's a change in look for the Raiders for their first round picks moving forward. And yes. I think Brock Bowers for sure it should be good. I'm excited to see. You mentioned some of the things they've already been trying with him in preseason and where they've been lining him up. I'm very excited to kind of see all the different things that the Raiders are going to do with Brock Bowers. He should make a big impact for sure. And we are a gambling show at heart, so let's move on to our final part of the preview, which is having a look at the future odds and lines for the Raiders. Vegas have got the Raiders somewhere between 6 and 7 wins, so they've got over under 6.5. Under is plus 105, over minus 135, so probably leaning to 7 wins there. How do you feel about that line, Brendon? And how many wins have you got the Raiders at?
I have them at 9 to 11 wins, so I would smash the 6.5 at minus 135.
Excellent. Love confidence in your team. Love that. Byron, where are you?
Less confident than Brendon. I have them, unfortunately, at 5 and 12, but it's really tough, truthfully, because there's a lot of games. I think they have a really tough schedule. Because I think on paper they're better than last year, but I don't think the record's going to be. And if Minshew or AOC is competent, then I don't think it's out of the question that they get to 9 wins. It's just I struggle to pick them to get to there. Because I think they do have a tough schedule. But there's a few games that could certainly swing either way pretty easily. I haven't split with Denver. They could easily beat Denver twice because I think Denver are one of the most talent poor teams in the league. So yeah, I do have them at 5 and 12, which I don't really feel great about, I must say. So, I mean, would I bet the under? Maybe, but it's not going to be on my top picks of the year, I will say.
Yeah, and that's fair. And the other thing is that they were 5 and 4 without the McDaniels games. You know, they won 5 games alone just with Aiden O'Connell and Antonio Pierce.
They don't get to play Brandon Staley this year, though.
That's true. That's true. That's very true.
Well, I mean, they do get to play the Chiefs again, so I am being flippant, but yeah, I can certainly I prefer the team this year. That's what makes it so frustrating when I go through and pick every game, and I'm just like, I think they're a better team than 5 wins says, but I just think they have a really brutal schedule, truthfully. So it's tough to get them to it. So yeah, that's kind of my
and of course. Disclosure, I am looking at it with optimistic fan rose-colored glasses, but you take an 8 and 9 team and improve it across the board.
Yeah.
So when I saw that line, when that line first dropped, I was shocked. I was like, how can Vegas knows something. They know something.
We said that a few times on our previews because we had the same reaction, to be honest. The Seahawks, I think, are at 7.5, and it's like, well, I think they've improved across the board, and they have a 9-win season.
I have the Seahawks as a potential Super Bowl team.
Me too.
And but the actuaries in Vegas, they don't necessarily agree with me. There's a reason that they are the actuaries in Vegas, and I'm poor, you know. But I mean, when you look at everything on the face of it, it's shocking to me.
Yeah, I mean, 6.5 wins. It's tough because, like I say, and I think the fact that they won, the fact that going 8 and 9 last year maybe masked some of the problems. But I do believe Antonio Pierce is head coach. I think he might be worth a win or two. I believe in this defense as well, for sure. That defense is worth a few wins.
Yeah.
That's for certain. And if you can just get some consistency at the quarterback position, then a winning record isn't out of reach. I don't think. I think they can. I struggle to get them to 11 wins, but could they get to 9-8 and sneak in the playoffs? Yeah, hell yeah, they could.
Yeah,
I think that schedule's tough early, and I think that's the difficulty maybe of maybe where this is lent to. But the end, if they can just stay afloat and stay in it, the ending, the 5 or 6 games: Bucks, Falcons, Jaguars, Saints.
Yeah.
Chargers, 3 of the last 5 games against what we're expecting to be a very weak NFC South.
3 last 4 at home as well.
Yeah, if they can just stay afloat there, they could rattle off 4-1. They could even win 5 straight.
Yeah.
To finish the season.
And I cap them at 11. I don't see. I mean, they're not a contender they're not a Super Bowl contender. I think they're one and done in the playoffs. But as an absolute max, I going over the schedule, I saw a path to 11 wins. And I mean, it just, but yeah, that's, I love the line, but it makes me question my own, my own brain.
It is tough. There are a lot of tough matchups in there, but I think, and that's become part of that has become because they've, ended up finishing second in the division last year as a result of the strong finish, whereas actually, could have got a slightly more favourable schedule, but look, that's not how it's gone. But yeah, I think it's going to stay. I think if they can stay afloat during those first 6-7 weeks, sneak a couple of wins, then I kind of that back end, I've no doubt they can kind of catch up the wins there and find a way to get above 500. But I think it's going to be close to that. Playoffs, Brendan, how confident are you going to be? Are you that the Raiders are going to make the playoffs? They're just short of 3-1 or plus 290 to make the playoffs.
I'd put 100 down on 290.
Nice.
I mean, I feel like they're especially with their defense, they absolutely have a chance to make the playoffs.
Yeah, that defense is worth a few wins for sure. I think just how good it is, and we're expecting it with the moves that they've made to be even better. Top 10 last year you mentioned could be a top 5 defense this year, and that will certainly drag them somewhere. Should drag them somewhere close to 9 wins for sure.
I think a couple of the evaluators that I've been reading recently had them right around 7, which of course is top 10, but they were number 7 last year. They were number 1 from week 8 to week 18, but they were number 7 overall. I think you don't have Josh McDaniels in the building anymore, and whatever held them back for those first 8 games, they were able to play in Patrick Graham's scheme. And I think a 17-game season of them being able to do that, I think 7 is definitely a floor for their defense.
Yeah, for sure.
I know we're going a little long here, Brendan. Sorry to take up so much of your time.
No,
I just had a question on that defense. So one of the players that I'm like, we didn't really touch on it when we were going over the roster, so that's my bad, Paul. But what do you think? I think there's a real high upside case for Jack Jones this year with, Crosby and Wilkins, like we talked about. He just seems like he's become more ball hawky in the short time he was in Vegas, and my dog obviously agrees. I don't know. I just kind of love because he seems so eager to snatch at that ball and get to the ball, and I just love when you have a great pass rush and a ball snatching. We've had it with Duran Bland in Dallas, obviously.
Yeah,
and I just think that's such a good combination. So I just wondered kind of how your excitement level was on Jack Jones. Obviously, he had a bit of a weird ending, I guess is polite to say, in New England, from being highly rated to being out the door pretty quickly. But I think that's really to Vegas' credit that they've turned him around into a player that I think could be one of the breakout cornerbacks in the league this year.
Yeah, he's not a cover corner.
Yeah,
and he reminds me a lot of Trayvon Diggs, and in that he's good at reading the quarterback and he's excellent at breaking on the ball. And he was doing it all preseason. He was absolutely terrorizing the Raiders offense. And he did it again in the preseason games. You watched, there was an interception he had against Patrick Mahomes in that Christmas game where he was coming up the right side of the field and he was in coverage on Justin Watson. And he just simply made a great break on the ball. I mean, in the middle of the field in open space and coverage, he's going to get burned.
Yeah.
But as long as the other pieces are in place, exactly what you're talking about. And I think the problem in New England is they were asking him to do something that he wasn't capable of doing, and they weren't enamored with his coverage ability. And I think Patrick Graham, like when I was talking about different coaching styles, system guys and leaders of men, in management, you kind of there is something to be said for evaluating what you have and utilizing the talents of the people that you have. You can't take somebody who is illiterate and put them on the printing press. You have to allow them to play to their strengths. So if you expect him to be in the back pocket of every receiver he's covering, you're going to be disappointed. But if you put him in a situation where he's hawking the ball, running back in coverage, giving cushion to the wide receiver and staring down that quarterback, he's going to come up with a bunch of like really critical plays. And one of the things that NFL coaches try and stress is those big plays, those game-changing things. And that's where his strength is. He's not necessarily going to, over the course of a 60-minute game, be the guy that you rely on to shut down Hollywood Brown or Ladd McConkey or, what have you. But if you want him to take 8 to 10 opportunities through the season to get a critical stop, snatch the ball when the other team is driving, that kind of thing, that's the kind of game changer that he's going to be. I love him.
Excellent. Good stuff. Let's just have a look then at our last couple of bits. Odds to win the division, plus 900. We know the Chiefs own this division. It's eight consecutive AFC West titles for the Chiefs. Anyway, the Raiders challenge the Chiefs for, assuming it's the Chiefs, for the AFC West crown, Brendon?
No.
Very firm. No. Excellent. 9-1 though. It's a long price for a reason, I guess. Conference winners 50-1 plus 5,000. And to win the Super Bowl, 80-1 or plus 8,000 to win it all in New Orleans.
I mean, that's 3 $10 bets that I could get behind.
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely. Some great value there. Let's say, what would success be, Brendon, for the Raiders this year?
I feel like a winning record. As long as they win 9 games, I think it can be marked down as successful. They don't necessarily have to make the playoffs. I know the AFC is a strong field. The Chargers could surprise with their ball control offense. Bo Nix looked good in the preseason in Denver, although I wouldn't count on a rookie quarterback in any ever. But I feel like if they go 9-8 or better, it's been a success. If they make it to the playoffs, that's just a bonus. That's a little bit of toffee on the pudding, if you will.
Excellent. That would definitely be progress and something to build on for the Raiders. Brendon, that brings us to the end of our Raiders preview. Thanks ever so much for joining us. Everyone, make sure you'll give Brendon a follow. Lots of great content. If you need some fantasy tips, fantasy help for your team, now and even during in the season as well, there's some great content through the year. People you can pick up, people that might make a difference and help you win a championship. Make sure you'll give Brendon a follow at Big Boned FFB. ED FFB. And yeah, make sure you'll give Brendon and the guys a follow. Lots of great stuff. Brendon, thanks for joining us.
Yeah.
We're going to move on and we're going to talk next about the Kansas City Chiefs. We've got Tom Kraft joining us, previous guest, and we're going to talk Chiefs with Tom. We move on from the Las Vegas Raiders. Thanks again to Brendon, and we're joined by another guest to talk about the champs, the Kansas City Chiefs. We're joined by Tom Kraft from Midnight Sports and many other ventures. He's a busy man. He's Tom. Tom, welcome back to the show. We last saw you on our Super Bowl preview episode was the last time that you were on. I know you helped us out with the draft picks as well over the our Fans on the Clock draft. How have you been? How's your summer been, buddy?
Yeah, it's been good, thanks. It's been just waiting for the football season to come out. Obviously, I've been enjoying the the English football and stuff as well. Obviously, the Premier League's back, and the sport just didn't stop, really, did it, with the Olympics and with the Euros and everything? So, yeah, plenty keep me going until the NFL season. So, yeah, couldn't be happy, really.
Excellent, good stuff. You are a man of many ventures. You started Midnight Sports, I think, in the summer. Tell us about that. I know that's a venture with one of the other guests that we had on during our division preview episodes. So tell us what you've got going on.
Yeah, so well, funny enough, me and the other co-host, UK Browns NFL, we both do Hurdle the Line together on the Sleep at Work network, but then we just kind of got on really well, and then we decided to branch out a bit and start our own thing. So yeah, catch us on any of the socials on _ Midnight Sports on Twitter, Insta, and TikTok, and then Midnight Sports Podcast on YouTube. But yeah, so we just talk anything sports. It tends to be NBA and NFL, because it's the stuff that we stay up late for to watch. Yeah.
Excellent, good stuff. Make sure you go give Midnight Sports a follow, and Hurdle the Line as well, of course, on the Sleep at Work network. I think it was 3 or 4 Hurdle the Line guys we've had now and through this division preview series. So yeah, making some good connections with the guys over at the Sleep at Work network. Cool. Let's get into the preview then. Tom, we've got, a lot of good things to talk about, I think, for the Kansas City Chiefs. Nothing new there. Let's just quickly run over how 2023 went first. Went 11-6 and won the AFC West for the 8th straight time. 8 in a row. The dynasty was secured, 3rd Super Bowl in 5 years, and they went back-to-back with a 25-22 overtime win over the 49ers in a classic Super Bowl. They were swift to be written off. We had to get one in somewhere. Mahomes, it was the first time he was playing on a road playoff game, and they were underdogs in the divisional conference championship game and Super Bowl, according to the bookies, but still came out on top. And does defense win championships? That old saying? Well, maybe so last year for the Chiefs. Second-ranked defense carried the load as the offense had a bit of a down year. I mean, they've obviously set the bar so high, but yeah, a bit of a struggle at times for the offense, and the defense certainly stepped up. Tom, first of all, how would you sum up how the 2023 Chiefs season went?
I mean, obviously, overall, when you win the Super Bowl at the end of the season, you can't call it really that bad of a season. But it was full of ups. Downs, the Chiefs need to get the rhythm later on in the season. I think they were 7-2 at one point, but then they kind of lost, I think, 3 and 5 games or something like that, especially that one against the Raiders, which was one that hurt because it was they didn't even score any point. It was all off defense, really. So that was tough. But then, when it got to the playoffs, anytime you get to the tourney, you're always going to have a chance. And I was always going to back them, especially against Miami in that freezing cold. Then against Buffalo, obviously that was a crazy game, always back and forth between the Chiefs and the Bills. And then with the Ravens, the defense just showed up, really, just shut down Lamar Jackson. And co. And obviously Mahomes and Kelsey just did their thing, especially in the playoffs. Obviously in the regular season, Kelsey didn't have as good as the year, but when it came to the playoffs, he always turns up. So yeah, overall, still a great season when you end on the Super Bowl. But yeah, probably not as consistent as some of the other years before.
Yeah. How does it feel just to win all the time?
I mean, it feels pretty good. I can't lie, because I know that it's not always going to be like this. Because in football, I support Arsenal, and they haven't won a Premier League in however many years. So, it's good to be supporting a team that is winning. I know it's not going to last forever, so just got to live in the moment, enjoy it, enjoy what they're doing right now, putting his historic run together. So yeah, and just take it in as it comes, really.
Yeah, the Chiefs' first team to repeat as Super Bowl champion since the Patriots did it in 2003-04, 2003-2004, I should say. And it could be obviously the first team to go 3 in a row. We're looking for from that piece. 11-6 was the least successful record under Mahomes. It's interesting. Were you ever worried? Were you truly worried about the offense at any point during the season? Because it did look rough at times from what we're so used to seeing.
I was worried because the script seemed to be before the offense was that good that some of those teams that were lacking in some of the defensive categories that they got over the line because Mahomes could win shootouts. Whereas last year it felt like the offense took a step back, but then the defense took a step forward, and they were really elite. So I knew that our defense would always keep us in a lot of games. But yeah, there was definitely times, I think, when we lost the game against the Eagles. I remember staying up to watch that one. That was a fun one with MVS dropping wide open touchdown towards the end of the game. But yeah, there was definitely times in the season I doubted a little bit, but I knew that the defense was going to come through, and I knew that would keep us in games that would allow the offense to get through the problems that they were having. And fair enough to MVS that even in in the regular season he's dropping passes left, right, and center, but in the playoffs he really stepped up big in some of those games, some of those clutch moments. So yeah, there were times of doubt, but at the same time, not really. With just how well the defense played and having Mahomes really.
Excellent, Byron, George. Quick one for you guys. Did you we talked about it a lot during last season? Did you ever really truly doubt the Chiefs?
I'm not sure if they were my Super Bowl favourites like at mid-season. I mean, to that degree, I guess I was doubting them as Super Bowl favourites. I mean, they were always going to make the playoffs and they were always going to be good. But, it was kind of tough to see with, one of the things that frustrated me a lot of the first half of the season was the lack of snaps and lack of involvement from Rashee Rice, who was clearly the best wide receiver on the team immediately. And it kind of took, I think his breakout in the second half of the season to really get going on offense. So, yeah, I mean, I guess once the playoffs came around, I think I picked the Chiefs. I think we all did really to win every round of the playoffs because once they got rolling, that defense was really, really rolling. I think that's when it was like, okay, I'm not doubting them, period. But yeah, I think certainly mid-season-ish, I wasn't picking them to win the Super Bowl. So as much as you can doubt the Chiefs, because, geez, I mean, like you say, 11-6 is the worst record under Mahomes. It's just laughable, isn't it? That's ridiculous. I think, yeah, that's about as much doubting as I would ever do of a Patrick Mahomes team, I think. Unless they show me something worse in the years to come, but certainly in this era.
Yeah. I think there was just a worry, like you said, about the wide receivers, and Kelsey looked a bit slow and a bit old compared to previous years. And I think it wasn't a surprise that, they're the new Patriots where no matter what, you just expect them to win. And especially how many times they've come down from, I think it was 3 times they've come back from double-digit deficits in the Super Bowl. So you can't really ever rule them out. It just felt like teams like the Bills or especially the Ravens would have. It felt like their year to actually beat the Chiefs and actually get to that promised land. But the Chiefs just do it again. So I think there was some doubt, but yeah, it feels the team where it's inevitable now, which is scary for any AFC teams.
It does. Yeah, Chiefs and the under was a particular favourite bet of mine during the playoffs. I think it was all 4 weeks, wasn't it? From the wild card round through to the Super Bowl, Chiefs and the under hit. I think any money we lost during the regular season, we made back on the playoffs for sure. With that run, 15.8 points per game, the Chiefs gave up. So yeah, didn't have to score lots to win them. Let's have a look at the off-season headlines, Joe. Key players got paid as Kelsey for 2 years, $34.5 million, and Chris Jones for 5 years, $158 million or $159 million. Become the highest paid players for their positions. Key pieces lost on defense, though, is Snead gone in a trade to the Titans. Willie Gay Jr. and Edwards exit Arrowhead. Are the youngsters ready to step up? Wide receiver upheaval, Tony and MVS gone. Tony just yesterday, MVS gone. Rice is in hot water. Juju's back, though. Hollywood has reached Kansas, and speedster Xavier Worth a punt as a first-round pick. That was delivered terribly. Sorry, Joe. Potential history makers with a three-peat in sight. Is this squad better than the last 2 years? So let's start there, Tom. What are your thoughts on, is this Chiefs team, the 2024 team, is that better than the team they've had for the last couple of seasons?
It's an interesting point because I think in some ways they are. I think offensively, they've taken a real step forward with some of the moves that they've made. Bringing in depth, bringing in, Hollywood Brown was, a big piece to bringing back Juju. Obviously, I know that was only recently, but his most successful years since leaving the Steelers have been with the Chiefs. And then, cutting Tony, finally that experiment, it just didn't work out. Obviously, he had those great moments in the Super Bowl where he scored the touchdown and he had the 65-yard return against the Eagles, but it just wasn't working out really. So I would say offensively, yes, or defensively, I'm interested to know what they look like without Snead because he was so really, really good last year. Obviously, Trent McDuffie's a great corner as well, but I do think we're going to miss Snead. So I'm interested to know what players step up in his absence. So I would say overall, I kind of agree with the statement, but at the same time, like in different senses, they've stepped forward and backwards a little bit, maybe.
So I'm pretty sure you called now, fans on the clock draft. You called that the Chiefs are going to draft Xavier Worthy.
I did.
You nailed that one. One of the few people that did nail it, kind of outside the first couple, which were fairly obvious. You picked the Chiefs are going to draft Xavier Worthy. What are you expecting to see out of the wide receiver from Texas?
I'm expecting explosive plays. Really, I mean, I've seen it all during camp and all this kind of stuff. I mean, it will be interesting to see what it's like when he's in an actual NFL game and he gets hit for the first time. But if he can bounce back off that, and I think he could really, blow it wide open for the Chiefs, like a downhill threat who Mahomes can just throw deep. Because that's something that Mahomes had to become a better quarterback in the past 2 seasons since Tyreek has left, and he's definitely done that. He's been more dink and dunk, drive it down all the way down the field as opposed to just throwing it. Whereas, I think we are going to have the opportunity for those deep shots. It's not just going to be all shell coverage played against us. So I'm really excited to see what Xavier Worthy can do, and let's see whether he's worth the pick or not. So
yeah, Byron just mentioned in our chat as well, one that only happened a few days ago. I guess Creed Humphrey also got paid as well. But there's going to be a rookie starting left tackle. I think he's certainly on the depth chart as starting left tackle at the moment. Kingsley Suamaitea. Oh, I prepped that as well. I knew I got it. I was getting it right before. Kingsley Suamaitea. Is that close enough?
Yeah, I think that's close enough.
Okay. It's going to be starting at left tackle. Any concerns with kind of a rookie there at left tackle?
Not really. I think he's proven, at least in training camp anyway, that he is starting material. And we've kind of struggled with our tackles in the last couple of seasons anyway. So I don't think it's going to make too much of a difference. But he seems like an absolute monster. So excited to see what he can do at left tackle.
Yeah, excellent. Yes, apologies to Kingsley. I will work on that and make sure when we talk about him during the regular season.
I think it's Suamaitea or something like that.
Yeah, okay. I'll work on it though. I will definitely work on it. Byron, just a quick one for you guys. The pieces on defense lost Snead, Gay Jr. and Edwards. Who we're expecting to kind of step up for the Chiefs to kind of fill those spots, as they were all, in their own ways, difference makers for the Chiefs.
Yeah, I think Tom touched on it, but Trent McDuffie, I think, might be the best nickel corner in football. Certainly up there. I'm trying to think of anyone that'll take over him. So, I mean, he's going to have to play more outside, but, he was drafted as an outside corner. So I don't really think there's an issue there, but I think we might see him. He's already really highly regarded. Obviously, he's a very good corner, but I think we might see his game step up a level this year as an all-round corner rather than just being, like, say, probably the best nickel corner in football. So I think that's going to be an interesting one to see. And, Steve Spagnuolo is, again, like we said this a lot through the playoffs, like the Chiefs are so blessed that apparently nobody wants him as a head coach because it means that essentially you get a head coach on defense. It's such a blessing, as if things don't go right enough for the Chiefs as is. So truthfully, I don't say whoever they have there, I trust that Spags will get the best out of, but I do trust him to scheme to their strengths, and I think that's going to be one of them. I think, like I said, McDuffie, I think come the end of the season, probably going to be regarded as one of the best corners in football if he's not already, just because of how he's used already.
Yeah, I'm curious him becoming like the number one cornerback though, because I think there's a difference between being, the man and the guy who's like the second in line. So he's obviously got some big shoes to fill. And I think with the Chiefs, they've just drafted really well, especially cornerbacks. I think everyone in the NFL is crying out for cornerbacks, and the Chiefs have done what everyone wants to do and draft 1, 2 or 3 players to fill them holes on rookie contracts. And that's how you make a winning team. So, they might have the best quarterback in the league, but they also draft really well. So it's like a 1-2 punch, and it's set them up really well.
Excellent, good stuff. Let's have a look at some of those moves as well. We've talked about some of them already. Marquise Brown, Hollywood Brown injured. I think he's going to miss a few weeks. Hollywood Brown.
I think he's going to miss the first 2 games. I think it's a similar injury to what Tyreek had in 2019. I think he missed 3 games. But I think because it was in the preseason, when he missed the first 2.
Yeah, got banged up in the preseason, but yes, and we'll see hopefully him return. Juju, we've mentioned Carson Wentz is in as the backup quarterback at the second. The thought of him taking the field must absolutely petrify you, Tom.
Yeah, it gives me heart palpitations. I can't lie, because we haven't actually seen him play well since he left the Eagles, really. So
he had that one nice preseason.
I'm excited about that. Hopefully, he doesn't get called upon.
Yeah, you mentioned there was one nice throw had maybe to Worthy in the preseason, but yeah, he's come. If Carson Wentz having to take the field, something's gone disastrously wrong. A quick word on Louis Rees-Zammit as well. So he didn't make the 53, going through waivers. I'm not sure if he's cleared waivers because it was literally about the time when clearing waivers would happen. I'm not sure it's cleared waivers yet. Would you like to see him come back on the practice squad? And what have you kind of heard about how he was doing?
Yeah, I do expect him to clear waivers and come back to the practice squad. I think it was a shot for him to make the 53-man squad anyway, but I think, just to give him that experience in preseason is really good. And I think he's just going to work on, the different positions, whether it's punt returner, whether it's running back, whether it's wide receiver. I think he'll work on that in the practice squad and, just hone his skills more to, an NFL standard. So yeah, it's a shame he didn't make the squad, but at the same time, I can see him. Obviously, players on the practice squad as well. I think they can get elevated for 3 games or something. So maybe if he does clear waivers and come back to the practice squad, he might get some game time anyway. But yeah, hopefully he continues to progress and can make the actual 53-man roster next year. We'll have to wait and see.
Yeah, I mean, there's the extra practice squad spot reserved for IPP players. So, yeah, he'll have the opportunity, potentially, if the Chiefs do bring him back to take that slot. And, yeah, the opportunity to be elevated, I think it's 3 separate occasions to the 53-man roster. So, who knows, maybe down the line. But, yeah, bear in mind, he only stopped playing rugby in January. So, it's
exactly.
He's only just at the start of his journey. And for keeping him around as long as they did, they must have liked the look of him in some way. And who knows, you might catch him somewhere else or come back on the practice squad. But yeah, hopefully he does. We've heard good things. We've mentioned some of the key losses as well. You already talked about MVS and we mentioned defensive losses. And then from a draft perspective, excellent. Yeah, Xavier Worthy we've mentioned as well. I just baffled again that the Bills agreed to do business with the Chiefs after last time they traded and they let the Chiefs go up and get Mahomes. It truly baffles me. I'd just be knocking back that call if I was the Buffalo Bills. We've talked about Kingsley Stein at left tackle. Who else are you excited to see from that draft class and who might make an impact this year, Tom?
So I tell you one to look out for is Jaden Hicks, the safety. He's played really, really well in preseason, and even coming out the draft, people were saying that was a draft still in the 4th round, and I do think that Justin Reed's days as starting safety are numbered potentially if he continues in the way that he's going. If not, just a great safety tandem anyway. So I'm really excited to see what he does, and then Jared Wiley as well. He's shown some real flashes and excited to see what he does. And Kamal Hayden as well. I think he made the 53-man roster as well. So yeah, those three, and then obviously the top two. But yeah, Jaden Hicks is definitely the one that I'm really excited to see.
There was a trade, I think, yesterday as well for Peyton Hendershot from the Cowboys. I just remember that. So they kind of got stacked wide tight end room now in Kansas. Be interesting. Let's have a look at some of the lines. The odds. We are a gambling show, of course. So let's have a look at the odds and the lines. Vegas has got the Chiefs right around 11 or 12 wins. Tom, how many wins do you think they'll end up on?
13.
13? You like the Chiefs at 13 wins? Will that be
I like 13-4, yeah.
Will that be enough to get them the number 1 seed?
I think so, but we won't know until it actually plays out. But I do think it's a very competitive AFC, so I think 13 wins would get you to the number 1 seed.
Yeah, I'm with you. I've got the Chiefs at 13-4 as well. Joe, Byron, where have you both got the Chiefs?
14-3, but yeah, same ballpark. Certainly taking the over on that 11.5. Yeah.
Yeah, I've got over as well. Yeah, exactly. I've got them over as well, just because I don't think this AFC West is that strong. I think it's the Chiefs on a level and the other 3 down, and they've also played the NFC South as well, so a favourable schedule for the Chiefs to get that. And I think they'll get that number 1 seed in the AFC. I think it's all set up for them nicely.
There's 9 wins potentially there, 6 division wins 10 wins, 6 division wins and 4 wins against the AFC South before you've kind of really played anybody. Odds on, unsurprisingly, to win the division, heavy odds on. You can get them just over 3-1 to win the AFC and get to the Super Bowl, and they are plus 550 or 11-2 in UK odds to win it all. This might sound like a daft question, Tom, but what would be a successful season for the Kansas City Chiefs?
Completing the three-peat and cementing their name as one of the greatest teams of all time, even though they already are that. But that is the standard now. So getting to an AFC Championship isn't going to cut it. You need to go all the way and win it all.
Who worries you the most on that side, the AFC side?
Probably the Bengals coming back with Joe Burrow healthy is definitely one. And then the Houston Texans as well. They're probably the 2 that I'm looking out for the most. Because you know what CJ Stroud did in his rookie. He was incredible. So and they've only got better on offense and defense as well. So they're probably the 2 teams that I see fighting the Chiefs, and probably the Browns as well. How their defense is so good, it's going to keep them in games where offensively they might not play as well. So yeah, as long as Deshaun Watson's a top 12 quarterback or not, they're going to be there and thereabouts anyway.
Showing some love for your pal there as well, for Ollie. Good stuff. Excellent. Tom, that brings us to the end of our Chiefs preview. Give us a reminder of where we can catch everything you've got going on.
Yeah, so obviously _ Midnight Sports for on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok, and then on YouTube it's Midnight Sports Podcast. You can catch me at TomCraft98 as well, and then I'm also on Hurdle the Line, so at Hurdle the Line and at the AAW network as well, and my co-host on Midnight Sports as well, UK Browns NFL. So yeah, there we have it.
Make sure you go give the guys a follow. Some great stuff that they've got going on. We appreciate you, Tom. Thanks for joining us. And we're going to move on to the next segment of the show, which, Joe, remind me what we're doing next.
It'll be the Chargers.
It's going to be the Los Angeles Chargers. That's what we're going to do next. Right.
Thanks, Tom. See you guys later.
Cheers to Tom Craft there from Midnight Sports and the Sleep at Work Network, Hurdle the Line, all the other bits and bobs that he's doing at the minute. A great guest for the Chiefs and a great chat about the champs. But now we move on. Los Angeles Chargers. I've also noticed every time that I try to say the Los Angeles Chargers, I, for some reason, turn it into a Sean Connery impression, and I don't know why. The loss doesn't happen with the Rams, but happens with the Chargers. I don't know why I say it like that. Los Angeles Chargers. Anyway, shall we have a look at the Chargers, guys?
Sure.
Very good. Let's just have a look at the LA Chargers. 2023 overview. let's start there. 5-12, it was a disaster. Finished bottom of the AFC West, and they missed the playoffs. Come on, Joe, keep up, mate. Playoffs. I think that was me editing it, by the way, before. When the going gets tough, the Chargers give up. They lost 7 games by 3 points or less, the most in the NFL. Head coach Brandon Staley and general manager Tom Telesco bolted out of the building after the 63-21 beatdown by the Raiders. I can't speak. What's wrong with it? A 1-8 finish after a 4-4 start. It was their worst record since 2019. And a couple of veterans balled out for them, though. Khalil Mack was back to his best, and Keenan Allen also had a fantastic year before injury finished his year off. Both had Pro Bowl seasons. Byron, sum up the Chargers in 2023 for us.
Oof, dog shit, terrible. What a woeful sinking ship of a franchise that was. Brandon Staley should be embarrassed by how little he got from a relatively talented roster, and that 6-3-21 Raiders Thursday Night Football's not in terms of scoreline, obviously the biggest loss ever or anything like that, but I'm not sure I've seen a team give up on itself more in a game. That is a total we want this coach gone performance, and I mean they got what they wanted, but yeah, that's embarrassing.
Fair enough. I think that's the best way to describe it. Yeah, the lack of fight in the Chargers, I think, across the season was pretty evident. Obviously, Herbert got injured for a bit. He was shut down for the last few games. We got to see a bit of Easton Stick. Injuries again, a huge part of the Chargers season is normal, but I don't think that was an excuse for what happened. The team just kind of folded in on itself. Pretty terrible year for the Chargers. Anything more to say on 2023 for them, Joe?
Not really. Obviously, how they went out the playoffs the year before was basically how 2023 season went. Just a bit of a disaster. I know Herbert was injured quite a lot and being the main guy, but I think it was fairly obvious that Staley wasn't the guy. It was a surprise that they kept him, probably for money reasons and, the Chargers being cheap. So it wasn't a massive surprise that it didn't go well and players got older. Didn't feel like they revamped the squad. The offensive line, which everyone thought was going to be a major positive coming into the year, that one of the best, didn't live up to the hype. So it just, all around just was a terrible year for a team where everyone always expects to do well. And it feels like everyone's second or favourite team. But another disappointing year.
Byron, just remind us how many wins you had the Chargers at for last year.
I think I was over 5. I think it was probably 6. It might have been 7, was it? I think, if I remember rightly. 13, maybe. I think it might have been 13, yeah.
I'm pretty sure it was 15-2.
I don't think it was because I had the Chiefs winning the division and I didn't have them 16-1. It might have been 14-3.
Yeah.
I think it was 13-4, but it might have been 14-3. I'd be surprised if it was 15-2. Either way, it was a lot more than 5. And I did want to add some more notes to how bad this season was. Quentin Johnson looked like one of the worst first-round rookies in a generation. Like, it doesn't look like he knows how to play football, really. Simply. And Austin Eckler looked like one of us out there. Like, he just didn't look like he knew how to run. I mean, I'm discrediting you guys. You do run. I don't. So he looked like he was running with a piano on his back for half the season. So much so that I thought he might sign with Dallas in the offseason, the way our running back room has been built out. But even he's too good for us. He went to Washington. It felt like whatever could have went wrong last year did go wrong. Mike Williams, like you say, was out for the season in terms of injuries. Quentin Johnson, it needs a big 2024, I think, if he's to have any kind of NFL career, because he does not look like an NFL player right now.
And they got rid of his buddy, Max Duggan, went disgraceful.
Yeah, I don't think he was inspiring him.
Yeah. Let's have a look at some off-season headlines. And there have been plenty from the Chargers. Harbaugh's RV rolls into LA. Perpetual winner Jim brought in from Michigan to toughen up the Chargers. That was difficult, that one. I nailed that one. Offensive rebuild. So Eckler, as you mentioned, gone. Keenan Allen, gone. Mike Williams, gone. New OC Greg Roman in to give the Chargers a rushing lift. An alternative culture. Big Joe selected number 5 in the draft to set the tone and make the O-line the star of the show. Herbert suffered foot injury in off-season, but should come back just in time. Very good. Worried about weapons. Let's start there offensively. We mentioned there, big names gone. I mean, Eckler was terrible last year, but Keenan Allen, obviously extremely reliable. Mike Williams, great when he stays fit. They look very short of offensive weapons.
Well, in the pre-draft process, on the days before the draft, Jim Harbaugh was actually talking about how the offensive line is a weapon, which maybe sets a tone of how we expect them to run. And Greg Roman has a very specific standard of how he plays offensive football. It is very, very run-heavy. I think Justin Herbert can still be a good quarterback in the system. The volume probably won't be there as it has been in previous years, but that necessarily isn't a bad thing. But yeah, I am worried about the weapons. The running back room is Gus Edwards, who has upside in the touchdown department, but he's not a plus running back, is he? J.K. Dobbins is a walk-in injury report. Unfortunately, I love the talent coming out, but he's just always injured, and he's had bad injuries as well. He's not just banged up; he's had real injuries. So if he can come back and be a NFL starter, that'll be a huge win. And the running back 6th-round pick Kamani Vidal has had some hype in the offseason. He went from being a potential cut on the Athletics 53 projected to being actually rested for the final preseason game because his spot was so secure. But I mean, none of those players should really inspire confidence in that run game being a league lead in rush attempts, but that's probably where it's going to end up being, in that upper percentile. Just not sure who's going to be the person to do it. And obviously the tight ends, Will Dissly, Hayden Hurst, just released Donald Parham. It's jaggy, isn't it? It's just bodies rather than any kind of standout. Josh Palmer's your wide receiver 1. Lad McConkey never dominated at Georgia, so it's interesting to see how a bigger step up he can make on to the pros. I like his play, but is a player who'd never dominated targets at the college level going to come in and do it at the pro level? It seems unlikely, but smarter people than me have speculated he's going to have an incredible rookie season, so maybe there is room for optimism there. I just kind of struggle to see, I guess, picking a player to stand out in this offense.
Yeah, I think the problem with what Lad McConkey might have is if they do go 2 tight ends and 2 wide receivers, then they probably want wide receivers who can block.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not quite sure he's that kind of player. I think he would be great on a spread offense. Get out there, get 3 wide receivers, get him run along the middle of the field. But I don't think that's the style of play. I'm never sure with Greg Roman. I think he always does like one good year and then the rest of the time not so great. So I wasn't really inspired. Obviously, Harbaugh is obviously an offensive coach. Obviously, being a Chargers old QB back in the day is probably better than Easton Stick, to be honest. And he obviously did a lot of good things with Michigan. He was very creative how they played. So I think that'll be interesting. Not too fussed about the Greg Roman. And when Josh Palmer is your number 1, DJ Chark is your 3. You got Quinton Johnson, which you mentioned. I always think with wide receivers, if they've not really shown anything in the second year, then they're just never going to show anything. I think we're in the year now where wide receivers, if they are going to be the top 20 wide receiver, they're normally showing the rookie year, or worse in the second year if they've had a rough start. So it's a worry for them. I know they've obviously got the GOAT's son there as well. So if he can be anything like his dad, even at 50% of his, well, even probably 10%, he'll probably start for the Chargers with this squad. So it is a worry. I just worry for Herbert. I think I always have a soft spot. I always think he's going to be a top 5 kind of quarterback, but I just worry that it is going to be a very run-heavy team. But having that quarterback, you've got to let him throw as well. But it's just, what are they going to do in terms of who to? But that's why they need the offensive line to ball out so he has plenty of time and not get injured as he has been the last few years.
Yeah, my worry for the Chargers is a lot of square pegs in round holes, I think, is my worry for it. So I share your concerns for Justin Herbert. Well, he's, obviously, what we know of him, they do put the game on him a lot. They're asking him to throw the ball 40 times a game, but he came from Oregon where it was that kind of offense, and that's kind of why he ended up going so high in the draft. My worry is he's just going to end up going completely opposite and completely take the game out of his hands. So you need to find some sort of middle ground. And that might come, and it might just be kind of a few steps backwards to go forwards. But I worry for him this year. I kind of feel like he's been wasted, and that's not Jim Harbaugh's fault. That's definitely Brandon Staley's fault. But yeah, I'm a bit worried for him. And same with Lad McConkey. I was real shocked when they picked him. I like him as a player, but the fit just doesn't feel right at all for that offense and what you're going to kind of ask him to do. And yeah, it just seems very strange. So yeah, I think that's my just general vibe around that. But I'm excited to see what Harbaugh brings to LA. I think that's an interesting mix of kind of personalities themselves. And look, we've called out this team for a long time, us last year, but we was definitely saying it before about kind of just generally being soft. Harbaugh's not going to allow that, and he's going to certainly want to turn that around. So yeah, very, very interesting to see where this goes.
And you go I think what worry as well is obviously with Greg Roman, a lot of his times where he's been successful is had a mobile quarterback, with Kaepernick or with Lamar. You just do not want that for Herbert. I know he can get out of the pocket, but you just don't want him to take any hits, or is that kind of explosive. It's not Kaepernick or Lamar Jackson, full stop. So that's a worry as well, especially if they're them running backs. I think if they had a Eckler of old, you would feel a bit better, a bit more explosive players. That's just a worry that I hope they don't just start getting Herbert to do some silly runs and we're back to square one where we unfortunately watching Eastern Stick and football game and just deciding if you're going to bother watching it or not.
I do think Herbert has more rushing upside than he's shown in his career, but I don't want him running on a foot injury either. Like you say, I don't want him getting dinged up. Like you say, he's certainly not Kaepernick or Lamar Jackson, but I think he has more rushing upside than he's shown. He's a decent scrambler, and I didn't hate the idea of him rushing more, especially for fantasy. And then he got a foot injury, and I'm like, that is. Please don't have him running on it and getting injured again, because I'm sure, I love watching Justin Herbert play. He's such a beautiful thrower of the ball. And it's I don't want him running either, because I just think he's either going to get dinged up or that foot injury is going to come back and just ruin his season by being a nagging concern.
Yeah. The interesting is, again, just the challenge. What are they going to change? Because they were involved, it was the games they were involved in last year were kind of the extremes. They were involved in some crazy shootouts. Miami early on, the Lions, which were great games, and then that beaten by the Raiders, and then the rancid 6-0 win against New England. Just and yet that wasn't the lowest scoring game of the season in the NFL. So yeah, they're a bizarre bunch, and I'm interested to see. I think this is a real big challenge for Harbaugh to turn this around and this culture around. They also, they do seem to be bought in. He's a fucking lunatic. I think from what we've seen, the lift story is incredible. They got trapped in the lift for 2 hours. I would love to have just heard of what had gone on. The conversations in that lift would have been very interesting.
I loved Harbaugh commenting on how Herbert's shirt was dry when he got out, because that's what leader he is.
Look, triumph over adversity. Got out of that lift.
What percentage of you, by the way, thinks that Jim Harbaugh rigged the elevator? Because I'm about 75.
Very interesting. No, I don't think he's crazy, but I don't think he's that crazy.
Well, you should do with 25 in.
Just did it with his quads, just stop the elevator, just how much work he's been doing this off season. Then videos where he's doing all the drills. I can't see it.
The charging thing.
Yeah, I can't see Andy Reid doing them kind of exercises with his squad.
Look, we've seen Jim Harbaugh do it. We've seen John Harbaugh do it with the Ravens as well. He gets involved as well. So yeah, no, it's just
either move his quads or maybe just shoved a lot of khakis in the elevator shaft and jammed it up.
Yeah. Interesting. Let's see. Very interesting to see how this goes. Right, let's have a look at the free agency and draft moves. We've talked about a lot of them. Key moves. Gus Edwards in. We've talked about that. Will Dissler, Fulton, Connor Bozeman at centre, Keenan Allen, Mike Williams, Eckler and Corey Lindsey all gone. And then from a draft perspective, we've talked about this as well. Yeah, Joe Alt. Let's just give Joe Alt a minute or two. Yeah, I think he's definitely going to be a great move. I think just by far and away the best lineman, best tackle, I think, in that draft class. And it was a good draft class we're expecting to see from that position. Is this just like I say that this is the start of the culture change? Let's get the guys going to anchor that side. You've got Slater on the other side. You should have two fantastic tackles for the next 10 plus years.
Yeah, I think so. And I think it makes sense, really. There's part of certainly me, I presume us all a little like, imagine Justin Herbert with Malik Neighbors. That's going to be real nice. But I do think it's easier to scheme wide receivers or scheme offense around a great line than it is around a great wide receiver. So I think it makes sense. I think Joel, I don't think anyone's opinion has changed on him since pre-draft. He's a blue chip. He's one of them players, a bit like Quentin Nelson a few years ago, where you just go, this guy, if his career goes as we expect it to go, he's probably a Hall of Famer in 20 years, So, you can't quibble with the pick, and I think it is just like a, set it and forget it, and you just set for the next 10, 12, 15 years in Los Angeles.
Excellent. Very good. Right, let's have a look at some lines then for the Chargers. You said that now, you'll never say it a different way again. Over-under's 8.5. Do we think that's what do we think? Do we think it's a fair line, first of all? And where do you guys have the Chargers? Which side of the line and how many wins?
I have them at 9 and 8, so that probably means they're going 1 and 16. If my previous, if anything to go by. There's a few games where I gave them the benefit of Jim Harbaugh, truthfully, who is a winner and is driven, and I don't think he'll sack it in. So, I could see them between 7 and 9, 7 and 10 maybe wins. Like I said, I had them at 9. Not sure I'll be betting the over because I think there is a lot of issues with the roster, obviously. I'm giving the coaching and the quarterback a lot of credit to get to 9 there. So, it's probably not one that's going to make my bet shortlist of the favourites of the season, but I do have them just over.
Yeah, this is one of the teams where I have no idea. Like you said, when you look at that squad, you're like, this is a terrible team. What are they going to do? Except obviously the quarterback and the offensive line. They managed to keep quite a few like the defenders on shorter contracts, but it feels like a lot of them are knocking on, and they've brought some, veterans in. So I'm not quite sure where that's going. But then I say, the Harbaugh effect. He just wins everywhere. Came to San Francisco with the team was performing terribly. It wasn't like they're blue, but he made them better. And then suddenly, when you look back, that squad he came into was good, but it was only good because he made them that good. Yeah. And when you look at the first 9 games, I think they could start off well. They got Raiders, Panthers, Steelers to start. Obviously got the Chiefs. Then they got the bye. Then they got Broncos, Cardinals, Saints, Browns, Titans. And the first 9 games, they're probably not the favourites in obviously the Chiefs game. And you just think like the Steelers, Browns, it could be like a toss-up, but the rest are probably the favourites for. So they could go 6-3 in the first 9 games, And then once you're on that roll, then they've got like a tough slate to end in, but they've still got the Falcons, Buccaneers, and Denver and Patriots to play, and Raiders. So when you look at that schedule, it's not that tough to see them get 9 or 10 wins. But then you also look at that team and it's terrible. So it's that team where I have no idea what they're going to do. I think they've got such a big floor and ceiling in terms of how many wins they could get.
I'm on 8 wins as well, and Harbaugh having a huge chunk of them accredited to him, I think. I think they'll probably, a lot of those games you're always saying, you can see them, and I think they'll just split them and go 50-50 in them. And we'll be going, how the fucking hell the Chargers lost that game, sort of conversation that we had so many times before. But I think that would be a good year for the Chargers. Coming off the back of last year, kind of a step. You're not going to fix this overnight. It's going to take 2 or 3 seasons, I think. I think Harbaugh's in it for the long run. And, I think that would be 3 more wins would be a step in the right direction, I think. Let's have a look at the division. Plus 350. I think relatively short. Is that right, Joe?
Let me check.
That's not right. They can't be plus 350.
They probably are. I mean,
What if the Chiefs are -2 something?
Yeah.
And they're second favourite. The other two
second
teams are what,
favourites.
6.5 and 5.5 there.
Yeah.
Apologies for doubting you. Yeah, plus 350. Seems very short. Plus 350 for the Chargers to win the division. 18-1 to win the AFC and be the representative in the Super Bowl, and 35-1 to win the Super Bowl, which I think these are all far too short for me.
Agreed. And I do agree on the division winner. Like I think it is right, but like just because of the Chiefs being so dominant, the second favorite is going to be, thereabouts. I truthfully, I don't really like betting any of these lines. If I was picking one, I might try and pick them to make the playoffs, maybe at plus money. But
I was just about to say that because I
don't have them in. But
yeah, I could see them being like a Steelers kind of team where they would somehow win 10 games or 9 games. And you sat here like, how they won 9 or 10 games? When you look at some of the teams who had 8 and 9 wins last year, but before they were terrible teams, just talked about the Broncos. One go either way, and you just sat there like, how the hell have these made it to the playoffs? But, it happened. So I think at plus money, I think that's the only one I would be tempted with, because I don't think they're not going to win the division. Or if it gets to the playoffs, they're definitely a wild card, see you later kind of team.
Yeah, it's weird because they got that line. So they're favouring. So the bookies are favouring over 8.5 at -155, but then you can get them to make the playoffs at plus 105.
Well, I think to be fair though, like the Bengals had a winning record last year and didn't make the playoffs.
Yeah, that's true. You probably.
And I think the AFC North's going to be really good again. So you think
you might need 10.
I have 3 teams coming from the AFC North making it, and then I think
South as
you look at the AFC East. You've got the Bills, the Jets, the Dolphins, who you could all make a great case for. Like Joe says, South. You've got Texans, Jags, Colts, who conceivably could all make it as Yeah, I struggle. As I say out loud, I don't think I'm going to bet them to make the playoffs. Yeah, it's just the West. Yeah,
which is bad.
Yeah, cool.
Yes, I don't think I would be taking that make the playoffs. Actually, now that I think.
No, you've talked it out. Fair enough.
Yeah.
Right, let's move on then. That's the Chargers done. We're into our podium bets. That's all 4 teams covered. And let's have a look at our AFC West podium bet. So this is we're a bit after the Olympics now, so it feels weird explaining this. But we've got gold, silver, and bronze bets. The Paralympics are starting tomorrow, isn't it?
And I think people get what the Olympics are. Like, it's not like a Mandela effect the other 3.5 years.
Just feels like it's been a few weeks now, that's all. So we're gold, silver, and bronze bets based on how confident we are in our bets for the AFC West. I, as always, will go first and talk them out and see what the guys think about it. So, I'm going to go all 3 of the other teams in the West not to make the playoffs in a bit of a parlay. It is terrible. It's -146 odds. Chargers, Broncos, and Raiders all heavily favoured to miss out on the playoffs. Treble them up, you'll get slightly better odds, -146. So it's the odds, which is why, because it's just not a particularly fun bet. But I just think all 3 are going to miss out, and as a result, 146. My silver bet, we've talked and mentioned about how great I think Max Crosby is. He's up there with kind of some of the favourites to win the Defensive Player of the Year award. I'm going to back it. I think for the purposes of this division, I think it's a great bet, plus 750. Max Crosby to win Defensive Player of the Year. He's just improved year on year, and I think he's ready to make that one final leap. Gold for me. Chiefs to win the AFC. I was toying just between the Super Bowl and AFC. I'm just going to go Chiefs to make the Super Bowl. I do think they'll win it, but plus 325 to win the AFC. I just don't think anybody's going to stop them. That's where we are. I just don't think they're going to stop them. I think they're going to be right in the mix for that number 1 seed. And then they've shown they can win away on the road in the playoffs as well last year. So it doesn't matter where you play them when it comes to January. Chiefs to win the AFC for me at plus 325. Thoughts?
Just a little curious on the Max Crosby one. I don't know the history of it, but it feels like to be a OY in any category. Making the playoffs would probably be like a requirement, I would think, for a lot of them. So I'm not saying it's a bad bet because I love Max Crosby, obviously, but I wonder how bad of a season can the Raiders have and he be in contention for DPOY is my only kind of concern. I think individually I like both bets. Obviously, the not to make the playoffs is a bit short price-wise, but I can certainly see the logic. We just talked it through. Like, I no chance I have to think the Broncos or the Raiders make the playoffs. Chargers a little touch and go, so again, it's a little short in price, but yeah, it's just like Crosby with the Raiders being bad. How bad can they be? I guess is my kind of thought on it. But it does kind of feel as well like if anybody deserves like a. You remember when Ryan Giggs won the PFA Player of the Year and he nowhere deserved it in like the mid-noughties, I think it was like maybe even like 09-ish.
Maybe, yeah.
Yeah. If Max Crosby can get it on like a lifetime achievement type thing, I know he's not that old, but like, you know, he just deserves one. If like there's not anyone who has a spectacular season, I don't mind just giving him a bit of a sentimentality boost, truthfully. So, like I say, I don't mind it individually. I just kind of wonder how the two marry up, I guess.
Yeah, that's fair. Joe, any thoughts on the podium bets?
Yeah, I'm similar. I think Crosby's had a good summer as well, where he's still been in the headlines and everything's been good in that term. So I think we talked about it in another Defensive Player of the Year, where it feels like the storyline usually takes over sometimes when it's usually between 3 or 4 guys, and it's, you know, what's the story, like which way it's going to sway. So I can see Crosby getting there, and yeah, you know, the Chiefs one, even though it's basic, it's fairly odds on, and I probably would have gone the same, to be honest. So, yeah, so good bet.
Oh, Joe was about to launch into an Oasis pun then.
Me too, yeah. Well, some might say he did, but
hey, there we go.
Got to roll with it, you know.
All right, enough. Byron, let's have a look at yours.
Yeah, Broncos fewest regular season wins in the NFL, plus 550. I think I've spoken fairly clearly on what I think of the Broncos throughout the podcast, but I think they're a very talent-poor team. I think their only blue-chip player is Patrick Surtain. And even Sean Payton and Patrick Surtain doesn't seem like a match made in heaven. Like, I think Surtain is due a big contract and due a wage bump. And when he was asked about it earlier in the offseason, he was kind of like, he'll be paid on my schedule. I was like, well, that's fine, but it's not, you know, the 90s anymore, Sean. I know he wasn't a coach in the 90s, but, like, feels like a very old-school mentality. Like, if you've nothing to say, same for Jerry Jones, you know, just don't say anything, really. You're not going to help the cause. And again, I just think they're so talent bereft. I don't have much faith in Sean Payton. I know they won games last year and they had a better record than they probably deserved, but I don't know. I think they're a bit of a sinking ship, truthfully, and I don't know. I just don't really have any faith in them this year. I think they're a couple of 3-win kind of team. So, yeah, that's where I'm going with that. Chiefs start 5-0 is plus 550 is my second favorite bet, my silver place one. So, you know, Chiefs are obviously very good. They start, it's not an easy schedule, but the first 2 big games are at home. Start at home against the Ravens, home against the Bengals, travel to Atlanta, travel to the Chargers, and then at home against the Saints. Obviously, it's not a lock, but I would have them favored in every game, unsurprisingly. Going to be favored in every game, period, really, anyway. But I'm not as high on the Ravens as I previously have been. I think this is a good time to play them as well. Fascinated to see Xavier Worthy week 1, what kind of Andy Reid schemes up for him. And then, yeah, the Bengals will be tough in week 2. But again, Jamar Chase is sitting back out of practice today. Things aren't perfect in Cincinnati. And again, I think those are 2 tough teams. But if you give me 550 for the Chiefs to win any 5 games in a row, I think it's a pretty good bet when you consider the 325 to win the AFC, which involves them winning 3 playoff games in a row. Yeah, I'll take that as a good starting point because then, yeah, Falcons, Chargers, I don't think should cause much trouble. Home against Saints shouldn't cause much trouble either. So if they get to 2-0 start, I think that's going to look like a great bet. And then my gold one is, again, who isn't high on the Chiefs this year, but yeah, over 4.5 division wins at even money plus 100. The division stinks. I don't think the Raiders are a good team. I think the Broncos are one of the worst teams in football, as we've seen below. So, I mean, if they can double up on that, that's 4. And then even if they split with the Chargers, that's 5. I think there's a very fair chance they could go 6-0 in the division because they're so clear talent and coaching-wise above everyone else. But yeah, I think even giving them a split with somebody, I think I'd favour them to win the other 5 games. So yeah, over 4.5 wins for the Chiefs for me.
Nice, love those 2 Chiefs bets. Yeah, I think that one will be tricky. We saw the Lions kind of give them trouble and beat them on opening night last year. I think the Ravens will be good again, but I don't know. Yes, it's a tough spot. Kind of feel like the Ravens might need a few weeks to get in their stride. But yeah, love those 2 Chiefs bets.
Yeah, similar. I love the Chiefs bets. You know, I actually want a UK Broncos fan on here, so I'm going to say I'll disagree with that last one since you always keep scaring them off, Byron. So
Good stuff. Right then, Joe, let's have a look at yours.
So my
Ooh.
bronze is the Raiders with the most sacks in regular season. So it's at plus 5,000. They were nowhere near last year. I think they were like mid with the number of sacks. But I just think with getting Wilkins in, and I think they're not going to score that many points. I think it's going to be close games where there's going to be chances to sack the quarterback. So I thought at that price, I thought it would be a nice one, and it'll probably help your Max Crosby one if that certainly helps. And I think it's going to be one of them defenses where they could rise with the staff they've acquired and the players they've got. My silver is Chiefs to score the most points in the regular season, plus 900. So last year it wasn't their best, and we've talked about how the offense gave it down. I just think they're going to be an explosive team this year. I think they're going to try and flip what the issue was last year. I think Worthy is going to be big. I think obviously when Hollywood Brown comes back, they've got a lot of speedsters and going to score quite a lot of points, and I think they're going to win 13, 14 games, and I think they're going to put some points on some teams. So I do like the price at plus 900. And then my final one is Mahomes over 33.5 passing yards. I was surprised how low this was. I know last year it was a down year and he only got 27, but the rest of his years, when he's played more than 14 games, he's hit way over 33.5. I think his lowest one was 37. Played 17. He did it 26 one year, but that was only 14 games. So I just think at that price above evens, I think, and if the Chiefs score the most points, I think they'll work well together. So I think it's going to be a very pass-heavy kind of team with, Kelsey, the wide receivers we've talked about, and obviously Rice, and the running backs as well are going to be plenty of pass catchers. So I think 33.5 is a pretty low number for Mahomes this year.
I love all of those, truthfully. That Raiders one I find fascinating. I don't know what number you need to get to, but 50-1 is worth a tenner of anyone's money, I think.
Last few years, I think 60 has been the number.
Yeah.
60 sacks.
Not out of the realm of possibility. I love that one though. 50-1, I think that's a great price. Not one I looked for.
50-1, good bet. Yeah, 9-1 for the Chiefs most points, and then Mahomes over 33.5 passing touchdowns, plus 110. Yeah, love those Chiefs. Yeah, love those Chiefs bets. The Raiders one's interesting. I think I'm on the Colts for that. Been discussing our AFC South episode. Excellent, gents. It's been a pleasure. We have done it. We've got to the end of our division preview series. Football is round the corner. We'll be back next week with not one, but 2 episodes. So you're going to get an episode drop on over the weekend, possibly Saturday or Sunday, maybe even Monday. Depends how quickly I edit it. Although I shouldn't need too much editing. You're going to get our full NFL. I've lost the word.
Season bets.
Season bets. Season preview bets. So all of our futures that we've got on for the course of the NFL season, that's going to be out. So will be we're promising significantly shorter episodes from here on out. Shorter episodes. I appreciate you. If you've been listening to it and watching all division previews, 2.5 hours is a long time to spend with us. Heck, I don't want to spend 2.5 hours with me. But yes, we'll be down to 45 minutes, an hour and 15. That's kind of where we're going to be moving forward for the rest of the season. So shorter, snappier pods. We're going to get that. And then you'll get later in the week before the NFL kickoff game on Thursday, before Chiefs-Ravens at some point on Wednesday. I think you're going to get the week 1 preview. We're going to have a great guest joining us, possibly 2 guests, working on a second one. But yeah, we've got a couple of guests joining us, certainly 1 guest joining us. We're going to talk spreads, we're going to talk totals. You're going to get the breakdown of what we've got. You're going to get our season competition that we're going to be doing, where one of us is going to do a ridiculous forfeit. It's going to be great, so make sure you tune in and give us a follow across all the channels. Good Teams and Great Teams cover over on Spotify. You'll be notified every time a new episode drops. Follow us, GTW_GTC on YouTube, Twitter/X, Instagram, and TikTok. I promise there will be more clips. That's something we're definitely going to make sure we commit to. We're going to do more clips over the course of the season as well. But thanks for joining us. And yes, we will see you in a few days' time.
Cheers.